It's just gone 7 minutes after 6. Today is Friday, the 24th of January, 2025. Good morning and welcome to it, the Friday edition of the Morning Brief here on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane and I'm here to deliver your morning brief. Come, let us spend the next 3 hours together informing and engaging each other and sharpening each other's perspectives on the key issues of the day. Well, you're waking up this morning. The so-called expropriation bill is no longer a bill. It is the Expropriation Act. It is the law of the land as we wake up this morning. And as you can imagine, the political reaction and the fallout is quite significant. I noticed as I was going through the reactions from the various political parties that you've got the DA saying that they are weighing their options and will likely challenge it in court, and therefore you did not get a reaction from the DA in government in terms of the Minister of Public Works, but you did get a reaction statement welcoming the signing of the Expropriation Act from the Deputy Minister, that is Thulasizwe. So he welcomes it and gives a background and what it will enable government to do. So that's the one aspect. Then you've got Rise Mzansi, in a way part of this, the parties that are cooperating within government, in that, they've taken up positions. Songezo Zibi leads the standing committee on public accounts, SCOPA. So they are welcoming it and saying that it aligns the expropriation law with the constitution. And then you've got Action SA on the other hand saying that they will be taking it to court and challenging it. So you can just see that this is the latest battlefield, at least in the government of national unity. So let's just quickly run through what the expropriation bill is, and I'm hoping you'll engage me on it, what the Expropriation Act is and what it is not. It is separate from the laws that are meant for land reform in the traditional sense, in that it resides with the Department of Public Works, and the Minister of Public Works can, may, is what we are told, expropriate land, and sometimes at the request of an organ of state. So let me give an example. A municipality wants to carry out some kind of, infrastructure build, and they need a piece of land for that purpose. They're calling it public interest or public purpose. They can then approach the minister to say, please expropriate this land, but there will be all sorts of engagements with the landowner, etc., etc. I want to run through it very quickly. Where it's interesting is that public interest, we're told in the definitions of the Act, includes the nation's commitment to land reform and to reforms to bring about equitable access to all South Africa's natural resources in order to redress the results of past racial discriminatory laws or practices. And public purpose includes any purpose connected with the administration of the provisions of any law by an organ of state. So that's not so clear. But the first part, the public interest, does include land reform. So we are clear about that. Then the powers of the minister, then it talks about, that's what I was talking about. Section 3 talks about the powers of the minister. The area that I think is going to cause a lot of debate is about compensation for expropriation. Remember, Parliament tried to undertake a whole amendment of Section 25 to allow for expropriation without compensation. The amendment didn't go far. Well, there's a sort of a caveat within the Expropriation Act, which if you read it, it's debatable. Does it amount to expropriation without compensation? Section 12, subsection 3 is going to be the big one, I do think. It says it may be just and equitable for nil being zero, nil compensation to be paid where land is expropriated in the public interest, having regard to particular circumstances. And I think the circumstances, when I was reading them, they do include instances where they talk about the land where the land is not being used and the owner's main purpose is not to develop the land but to generate income, so speculation. And then you talk about expropriation of an organ of state holding land that it's not using for its core functions and is not reasonably likely to require the land for its future activities. So that relates to land already held by an organ of state. And I'm a bit confused by that. Why would you expropriate land and pay nil compensation where the land is already owned by an organ of state? Is that even expropriation, I wonder? Then there's also talk about where an owner has abandoned, yes, that's the other big one, where an owner has abandoned the land by failing to exercise control over it. This is significant, of course, because when you talk property, you're not just talking land. And it's easy for us to fall into that default. There's all sorts of property, including immovable property that may include buildings in the inner city and the likes. So where the owner has abandoned the land, so it's conceivable that a building in the inner city, an organ of state such as a municipality, may approach the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure and say, this block of flats has been abandoned and we are worried in the public interest that it compromises safety, etc., etc. Please expropriate it. And then all of those do ensue after that. But the essence of it is that the need for just and equitable, compensation is not removed, and it must be emphasized. It's just Section 12, subsection 3 that talks about the possibility of nil compensation under specific circumstances. I don't know. What do you make of it all? Give me a call. The number to dial 086 000 2032, as well as your WhatsApp voice notes. Please send those to 061 410 4107. The other issue that I'd like you to engage me on is, the statistics are out from the Independent Police Investigating Directorate, IPID, and they are telling us that in the 2023-2024 financial year, South Africa saw 110 reported incidents of rape involving police officers, and half of these are said to have taken place while the officers were on duty. I mean, it's a recurring problem. It's a constant problem of police officers being accused or involved in rapes, and in some instances actually going on to be found guilty. I just want your reflections. Do we stand any chance to win against the battle? To win the battle against rape, when even those who are supposed to be keeping us and keeping women safe in particular are sometimes involved in this way, and what needs to be done to stamp out these incidents that occur, that tarnish the reputation of the SAPS, because there are many good men and women who work in the SAPS. And lastly, please do engage me and give me your reflections on the hearings at the Judge Selbin Benenge Judicial Conduct Tribunal, the kind of conversations that it has brought forward around sexual harassment. We're doing this at the end of the second week. You certainly are seeing debates about the manifestations of sexual harassment, the different power relations, the issues about submission versus consent. I've seen a lot of that debate. Just your own thoughts and reflections from the hearings. We'd love to hear from you on that. And of course, we do have all of your regulars locked and loaded. And Musa with your news updates every half hour. Rob Byrne with your traffic every 15 minutes or so. Zaikan is watching your sport throughout the morning. Dauleng Lechela has your economics, business and market news covered. And Sipho Mantula with your Africa update just before 8 a.m. Your calls 086 000 2032 and your WhatsApp voice notes, please send them to 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The first hour of the Friday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
All SASA Gold Cards will stop working on the 28th of February 2025. Replace yours today with the new Postbank Black Card at no cost. Join hundreds of thousands of grant beneficiaries already receiving their grants on their new Postbank Black Cards. For your convenience, you can collect your card at multiple locations nationwide. Card replacement points are at selected ShopRite Checkers, Pick n Pay and Boxer stores. To find a location near you, dial *120 *218 *3#. Don't wait. Upgrade your card today for free. Trusted by millions for 150 years. Postbank, your bank.
Abafana Best 10 are pumped up to get to the round of 16. But the Chili Boys believe they will display a happy walk after the final whistle. This is the Nedbank Cup round of 32. Golden Arrows FC versus Chippa United FC on Saturday, 25 January at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Daily News Diary on SAFM.
Hey, and good morning to you. I do imagine that the Expropriation Act is going to dominate the news agenda today.
Good morning, Thulas. Indeed, we have reaction from various political parties on the expropriation bill, which has been signed by President Cyril Ramaphosa into law, and it repeals the pre-democratic Expropriation Act of 1975, basically setting out how state organs may expropriate land in the public interest. So the DA and Freedom Front Plus are threatening to challenge it in court. The ANC, however, saying that it's not surprised that the legislation is criticized by those that have benefited from the old Expropriation Act. Other stories we're looking at, the Mineral and Petroleum Resources Minister Gwede Mantashe saying that illegal mining is a war on the economy. Over 1,000 illegal miners were retrieved from a disused mine in Stilfontein in the past weeks, and the minister yesterday released the mine health and safety figures for 2024. The Judicial Conduct Tribunal probing sexual harassment allegations against the Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge continues. The complainant Andiswa Mengo was under cross-examination, and yesterday Mbenenge's counsel concluded the hearing by challenging her testimony that she did not have a copy of her original December 2022 complaint when she had to lodge a new complaint, which is now before the tribunal. And the city of Tshwane calling on its residents to report spaza shops that are selling expired food and businesses that are also not complying with the city's health and safety bylaws. You know that last year government gave spaza shops and food handling facilities 21 days to register their businesses to ensure compliance, and that was extended. And just lastly, the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Velinkosini Hlabisa is promising more resources in the Eastern Cape to prevent initiate deaths, and he made this commitment during a meeting with the provincial traditional leaders in East London. So some of the stories that we are focusing on this morning.
All right, and thank you for that. We'll be hearing from Anne every half hour with your news updates here on The Morning Brief.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
So we do have a lot of warnings today, so I do propose whenever we do that, prioritize the warnings and then give you your temperatures for the rest of the country. Let me start with this one. It's an orange level 6 warning for disruptive snow resulting... No, I do think this is the wrong weather. All right, let's take a moment. This doesn't look right to me. Let's take a moment. I'll be back with your weather in just a moment.
During Ford's Blue Sky offers, you can get a new Ford Territory Ambiente from just $6,199 per month, including our optional service plan. 10% deposit, primeless 5.25%, 40% residual. Visit your trusted Ford dealer today for Blue Sky offers, where our Ford Family Guarantee comes standard. Limited time offer while stocks last. T&Cs apply.
The Natal Rich Boys want to demonstrate their wealth with a win to reach the last 16. But the Buccaneers say they will illustrate why they are the reigning champions. This is the Nedbank Cup Round of 32. British Bay FC battles it out with Orlando Pirates FC this Sunday, 26 January at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
Yeah, my apologies for that. I did have the wrong weather opened. So all of those warnings I was telling you about, non-existent. They're not there. The weather for today, the 24th of January 2025, looks like this. Pretoria, partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers with a minimum of 16 and a maximum of 31. Johannesburg, partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 15 to 28. Mbombela will be partly cloudy with scattered showers and thunder showers, 18 to 30. Polokwane, partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers in the afternoon, 17 to 29. Mahikeng will be partly cloudy, 21 to 33. Bloemfontein, partly cloudy and windy, 20 to 34. Kimberley, partly cloudy, 19 to 38. And Cape Town, partly cloudy with morning fog, becoming fine from the evening with a minimum of 19 and a maximum of 26. George, partly cloudy, 18 to 25. Gqeberha, partly cloudy, 20 to 27. East London will be cloudy with light rain in places, 20 to 26. Durban will be partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, and the minimum temperatures there being 21 and maximum 30. Richards Bay will be partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 23 to 32. And finally, Pietermaritzburg will see morning fog patches, otherwise partly cloudy with isolated showers and thunder showers, 17 to 29.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
So let's tell you this story now. A new fast-moving wildfire has erupted in Los Angeles in the United States. The fire has prompted tens of thousands of people to evacuate a region already reeling from the most destructive fires in its history. The fire started in the northwest of the city of Los Angeles in a mountainous region that borders several residential areas and schools on Wednesday morning. For more on this, I'm joined by Trevor Abrahams, who is the Managing Director of Working on Fire. Good morning to you once again, Trevor, and thank you for your time this morning. So tell me about, it's called the Hughes Fire, and it's near the Castaic Lake. How are we here when we thought the fires were receding and were coming more and more under control, from your experience in dealing with fires such as these?
Good morning, Thulasizwe. Thulasizwe, it is rather strange. You know, they're in their winter at the moment, but they're in an area that is fire dependent, much like our Mediterranean region around the southern coast of our country, on Cape Town, right down to the Garden Route. So we have an area that does sort of have experience of fire, even though in the middle of winter for them, it is a bit extreme. I think what we're looking at now is really the impact of climate change, particularly the pattern where you have a fairly wet period followed by very, very dry conditions and very high winds. So as late as March last year, this area was experiencing floods. Yeah. And then, you know, you had this dry period coming in with these extremely high winds. So it's something that serves as a bit of a warning to us, you know, with this kind of climatic conditions that we're experiencing now. The fire threat is going, and as the UN study Spreading Like Wildfire says, it's going to be more frequent, more intense, and it's going to be burning in areas which don't normally burn.
So if I understand correctly, vegetation that is a result of, you know, initially a rainy season, then it dries up. That's a key element in terms of fueling the fire, and add to that the wind. How difficult does it then make the job of fighting and suppressing the fire?
So that's exactly the formula that's making it difficult. The kind of winds we're seeing in some of these big fires internationally is something that has not been experienced typically. So much so that you can't even put aircraft in the air when the fires actually start. And of course, what you have here is what we call the urban wildfire in wildland interface. You have urban dwellings right in between the wildlands. And I mean, just think of the sort of south coast of South Africa, the Garden Route. And you have exactly that type of forming. Of course, there in LA Basin, it's much more densely populated. And when we were there at the wildfire conference in Pasadena, you saw the houses, you know, right up against the hills and amongst the wildfires. So we're having what's essentially a vegetation fire running out of control, spreading into your urban areas.
And in terms of, you know, one of the expectations is that there's a chance that that area around which the Hughes fire is now burning might receive some rain. Does that necessarily help the situation, at least at a humanitarian level? Or, I mean, I see that there are concerns that might even lead to mudslides and even flooding.
Yes, I can see there's been a lot of hope placed on the rain, and it will certainly dampen the spread of the fire. But of course, once you've had the landscape scarred with this type of fire, it is highly vulnerable for flooding. We had that in Knysna, in fact. After the fires there, we had to, in fact, engage on replanting some of the slopes because of the fear of what would happen when heavy rains come. So yes, it's one plague after the other. The wildfire damage spreading into their homes, and then if you have too heavy rainfalls, you're going to start having the mudslides.
And you keep referring to lessons that we should be learning from these fires. And I remember in my previous conversation with you around the Los Angeles fires, we were talking about the parallels between, it's on their west coast and our west coast as well, and you were making allusion to the Knysna fires of a few years ago. But what are some of the key takeouts, perhaps in terms of preparedness for us as South Africa?
At a macro level, we have to start managing our vegetation, and that means reducing our fuel loads in areas so that the spread of wildfire is curtailed. As I've indicated in the past, we have an added problem. We have these alien invasives, the gums, the wattles, the pines, that propagate fire very, very intensely. These are programs that unfortunately of late have, been scaled back a bit. We need to get to those alien vegetation because once they do ignite, they are the type of spreaders that make it less easy to contain, to manage those type of fires. And then at the homeowners level, people do need to look at what's around their homes, what's on their roofs, and particularly what's in their gutters, because wildfire is spreading into the urban areas not simply just by flames, but by the embers that are blown. And when your embers land on your roof, then everybody gravitate to your gutters, and if you have all the kind of garbage in there, the pine needles and all other kind of things, that's what actually gives your ignition point.
And then in terms of the suitability of our disaster management regime versus, I see that in the United States, the California governor, Gavin Newsom, is, signing executive orders to mobilize resources for flood and landslide preparation. Is as far as you understand it, is our disaster management regime suitable for the kind of disaster that can occur in case of a wildfire, a fast spreading and damaging wildfire?
I think that's a very, very valid question, and I don't think we're quite up to it, to be quite frank, Thulas. The kind of preparation and the kind of coordination and cooperation is always based on what is there in place before the fire. And I think what we saw in LA, even though they have regimes for evacuation, if we do not have our evacuation protocol sorted out, it can become extremely chaotic and can actually exacerbate the situation. Knysna, we had a completely chaotic situation when we had to evacuate, the town of Knysna itself. So those are things that we still need to actually develop here and put in place. And our National Disaster Management Center have been in conversations about, what do we need to do in these fires of this scale pick up, because the local authorities cannot manage on their own. You need a broader spectrum of collaboration of all the kind of resources you have.
All right. Thank you for your time and your insights once again. That's Trevor Abrahams, who is the Managing Director of Working on Fire. Let's check in now with Ann Musa with the latest news headlines.
Thanks, Thulas. Good morning. In the headlines, the DA says it will challenge the Expropriation Act. The party says it's in discussion with its legal team to formulate their case. This follows President Cyril Ramaphosa signing the expropriation bill into law yesterday. Police have arrested a woman on charges of possession of child pornography and money laundering in Houghton, north of Johannesburg. The 25-year-old, who's a web designer by profession, is said to be the girlfriend of Darren Wilkin, who was arrested last week after being found in possession of over 10 million images and videos of child pornography. And U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order declassifying files related to the assassinations of former President John F. Kennedy, his brother and former Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, and former civil rights leader Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM. guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
There's been a crash on the N1 South. It's happened between Sam Rand and Olifantsfontein Road. So that Friday traffic starting to really backlog through to Brakfontein interchange into that particular scene. Transorania in Pretoria coming through the tunnel of Bremer Street. That's heavy. There's some traffic light issues as you come out of the tunnel, and that's causing a backlog. Over in Durban, the Hunstedman Highway, heavier than it normally is. Hunstedman's a very busy route coming from Clavite up on your way towards Pinetown this morning. That traffic a lot busier, a lot heavier than it normally is. Got a breakdown on the N2 just after Umgeri Road, so the run into Spaghetti Junction being held up. Cape Town very busy out of Mitchell's Plain. You've got three big routes going north. They're all jammed up. AZ Berman to the R300, M7 to the R300, and Velta Vreden Road as you head up towards the Philippi area. Also crash on Cape Town's N2 inbound under the bridge at Jan Smuts Drive, and that's keeping traffic slow back as far as the airport. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Hey Zai, good morning to you. So it was nothing short of a demolition there. Stellies visited on Usutolma Peshankon.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly it. A total demolition. I think Amazulu just brought a butter knife to a sword fight. And it was Stellies who sliced through them. 5-0. That was the final score, and that's PSL action. All happened at Kings Wellatini Stadium. Devon Titus, star of the show, scoring twice, including a sublime solo effort as well. We've got the likes of Ibrahim Jabbar adding to the tally, and Lekolwane as well as Butchaka. Stellenbosch have now closed the gap on third place with Polokwane City 2 games in hand, raising their hopes for a CAF Confed Cup spot next season. Amazulu left reeling as their decision to field the same starting 11 from the last victory backfired, the pressure mounting for Amazulu to bounce back, while Stellenbosch's emphatic win sets the stage for a strong finish to the season. Elsewhere, Son Heung-min helped Tottenham gain some respite from their Premier League woes with a double in a 3-2 Europa League win at Hoffenheim. Bruno Fernandes scored a stoppage time winner for Manchester United as they beat Rangers 2-1 at Old Trafford. And some cricket action. The Paarl Royals crushing Durban Super Giants by 5 wickets with 15 balls to spare in their Betway SA20 clash at Kingsmead in Durban last night. The 4 points gained enabled them to increase their lead at the top of the table, and that's with their 5th victory. If the men from the wine country are happy, the local teams are in crisis with only 1 win in 7 matches. The Durban Super Giants remained marooned at the bottom of the table, and they will need 3 victories on the road to have any chance of qualifications at the moment. On to tennis action, Madison Keys, well, she saved a match point before stunning world number 2 Iga Swiatek to set up an Australian Open final against the 2-time defending champion Aryna Sabalenka. Madison Keys claimed a 5-7, 6-1, 7-6 victory over 5-time Grand Slam champion Swiatek to reach the second major final of her career. Poland's Swiatek served for the match at 6-5 in the third set and held match point, but Keys saved it, broke back, and then recovered from 7-5 down in a tiebreaker to advance. And this came after the Belarusian top seed Sabalenka earned the chance to become the first woman in 26 years to win 3 successive Australian Open titles with a commanding 6-4, 6-2 win over her close friend Paula Badosa. And there's action underway at the moment as we head to the Rod Laver Arena. It's Novak Djokovic that's taking on Alexander Zverev, and things are heating up as it should be in this tournament as we've got momentum that shifted in Novak Djokovic's favour. He led 4-3, breaking Zverev's serve, and only for Zverev to come back and level it 4-all. So it's a tight semi-final battle down under. Currently the set is tied at 4-4. Both players trading some rallies and vying for that spot in the final. Meanwhile, the second semi-final will feature the top seed Yannick Sinner and rising star Ben Shelton, and that's set to take place later at around 10:30 this morning. And that's where we'll leave it for now on the tennis court. We'll be serving more sport at the top of the hour. For SAFM, I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Good morning to you, Ntauling. So Donald Trump is wasting no time in putting into action some of his key programs. $500 billion AI infrastructure investment plan.
I think it's billion, Tulas. It's a trillion. It
Well,
be
$500 billion, 500 billion.
Oh, yes, my bad. Yes.
Vuga man. We are working here.
So Donald Trump, of course, unveiling that massive AI investment package dubbed Stargate, which aims to develop AI infrastructure across the country, backed by SoftBank, OpenAI, and Oracle. And there are plans to increase, of course, that investment over the next 4 years. Now, Stargate's first project will be a data center in Texas, with the overall initiative expected to create over 100,000 jobs. According to OpenAI, the project will support the reindustrialization of the United States and provide a strategic capability to protect national security and that of its allies. Now, the project has garnered significant support, with SoftBank's Masayoshi Son set to chair Stargate. Key tech partners include Microsoft, NVIDIA, Oracle, and OpenAI. But not everyone is optimistic, with Trump's face, Elon Musk, expressing doubts about the project's funding on X. Now, Trump's move marks a shift in the U.S. approach to AI, prioritizing economic growth and national competitiveness over regulation. This decision has been met with both praise and criticism, with some experts warning about the potential risks of unregulated AI development in the country.
Tell me about the Bank of Japan hiking rates.
So the Bank of Japan making a significant move in its monetary policy normalization by raising short-term interest rates to around 0.5%. This decision, made with a vote of 8-1, increases rates from 0.25% and brings the policy rates to its highest level in over 16 years. And the move is notable, as many other central banks, of course, are currently in a cutting cycle, while Japan is dealing with rising inflation and is trying to put a lid on that. The rate hike comes after weeks of speculation about whether Governor Ueda would delay the move until there was stronger evidence of rising wages and sustainable inflation. But with inflation accelerating to 3% in December, a 16-month high, the Bank of Japan decided to push forward with the rate increase. In response to the announcement, the yen remained flat against the dollar, but traders are bracing themselves for potential volatility when Ueda delivers his press conference later today. The Bank of Japan's hiking cycle started last July, and today's increase in rates is the second in the cycle, and market participants are expecting more hikes down the line.
Yeah, I hope Governor Lesetja Kganyago is not looking east.
Hey, no.
Look elsewhere but east. Don't look that side. Don't look that side. Our first roundup of the markets for this morning, please, Ntauling.
U.S. markets have continued their upward trend, closing in the green overnight. The S&P 500 in particular rallied to record highs after President Donald Trump called for lower interest rates and cheaper oil prices. That upbeat sentiment, however, not filtering through to local markets. The JSE falling into negative territory in yesterday's trading session, with the all shares slipping over 0.8%, fueled by losses in the financial 15, down 1.6%. On the currency front, the dollar is set for a weekly loss, with boosting the rand. The local unit trading stronger at 18.43 against the greenback this morning. And in big news out of Asia, traders digesting Japan's inflation print and the Bank of Japan's rate hike. While that plays out and while they digest that, markets are trading mostly in the green this morning.
Always on the money. That is Ntauling Lechela. She'll be back with her second update for the morning, and that's coming up just after 7:30 here on the Morning Brief.
Just last month, it was December, the season to be merry, or December, for those who know that it's not just a month, but a lifestyle. Now it's January and life is threatening watching financially. There's back to school and your own goals, and January is on everyone's lips.
Mara, you can get the relief you need right now and start the year strong with the personal loan from Nedbank with access up to 400,000 Rand. Search Nedbank Personal Loans and get a loan that offers you more. Nedbank. See money differently. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Ever
ever since Uspilion won 5,000 rand, 5 tower on Wheel of Fortune, he only wears white push-in sandals, star white, Baba, and he owns 10 identical pairs. And before he did not even know the Queen's language. Now, Kalabo, wow. Chance, let's watch Wheel of Fortune weekdays, Monday to Friday at 7:30 on S3 and see how one spin changed Billion's life and how it can change ours as well in just one day.
So why should I use We Buy Cars if I want to sell my vehicle?
Because We Buy Cars buys cars.
But will I get the right price?
Of course. We Buy Cars buys thousands of vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll get a fantastic price for your car. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
The only talk radio morning breakfast show that makes sense. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
18 minutes to 7. The current funding model for water infrastructure and services in this country is creating unintended consequences for municipalities. And this is according to Sean Phillips, who is the Director General of the Department of Water and Sanitation. Phillips says while municipalities receive substantial grants to address historical infrastructure backlogs and to provide free basic water, there is underfunding of infrastructure maintenance, which leads to deteriorating water systems. He joins us now to take the conversation forward. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. Tell us about these unintended and problematic aspects of the national grants, which you say are, provided for infrastructure backlogs and free basic water, but end up affecting maintenance by municipalities.
Thank you, Thulasizwe. Good morning to your listeners. Yes, we provide substantial infrastructure grants to municipalities to address infrastructure backlogs. The municipalities are supposed to use revenue that they get from the sale of water to do maintenance and operation of their water infrastructure, but we assist them with these grants to address the historical infrastructure backlogs. And they're also allowed to use the grants for major rehabilitation of infrastructure. Unfortunately, in some cases, municipalities are neglecting the maintenance of their infrastructure, of their water infrastructure. The councils are not voting sufficient funds for the maintenance of the infrastructure, and they're using much of the revenue from the sale of water for other purposes. As a result of that, the infrastructure deteriorates, and then they use the grants that are supposed to be used to address historical infrastructure backlogs to fix the infrastructure which is deteriorated due to a lack of maintenance. So unfortunately, in some cases, the fact that we're giving grants which can be used for rehabilitation of infrastructure is providing a perverse incentive for municipalities not to budget for maintenance of the infrastructure, because they know that if they don't budget for maintenance and the infrastructure deteriorates, then later they can use the grants to rehabilitate the deteriorated infrastructure.
It seems to me when I was reading your input that it seemed to me as if we're dealing with something of a domino effect here. The municipalities don't collect from customers, then they end up diverting monies here and there, including the grants that you are talking about, and goes all the way to the water boards not being able to pay you in turn for the raw, untreated water.
That's correct, Thulasizwe. In South Africa, water is not funded from general tax, like income tax and VAT. It's a trading service like electricity. Municipalities need to sell water to customers and use that money to either generate water or buy treated water from the water boards. If their billing and revenue collection systems are weak, or if they lose a lot of water to non-revenue water, or if the councils vote to use the funds from the sale of water for other purposes, then the municipalities firstly don't have enough money to maintain their infrastructure, but secondly then they don't have enough money to pay the water boards for the water that they're buying from the water boards, and then the water boards in turn don't have enough money to do the maintenance on their infrastructure, and they buy raw water from us as the national department, and we use that money to maintain and operate the dams.
Yeah.
And if the water board stop paying us, then we also start getting this difficulty because we don't then have enough money to operate and maintain the dams properly.
All right. Thank you for highlighting it this morning. I'm pretty sure that we will have the conversation once again and perhaps focus on how do we break that vicious cycle. That's Sean Phillips, who is the Director General of the Department of Water and Sanitation.
Big stories of the day. #The Morning Brief.
So giving credit to the initial reporting on this story of our colleagues at News 24, there's an alarming number of rapes that we are told are committed by police officers in this country, and that is of great concern. New reports indicate a disturbing trend of sexual violence by those entrusted with upholding the law. Let me give you the statistics. In the 2023-2024 financial year alone, we are told 110 rape cases were reported, with half of these occurring while officers were on duty. So 110 rape cases involving police officers. Let's speak to Lise Shuping, who is the spokesperson of the Independent Police Investigating Directorate, that is IPID. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. Just give me the outlines of the extent of the problem of police officers being accused, or even in some instances going all the way to being found guilty of rape.
Good morning to Thulasizwe, and good morning to the listeners. Yes, in the year 2023-24, we registered 110 cases of rape committed by police officers. And the top 4 provinces or hotspots were the ones that were leading. KZN was at 26, Gauteng 20, Western Cape 19, and Eastern Cape 15. And this is a worrying trend for us as IPID, because those who are supposed to protect the nation are the ones who perpetrate acts of violence against the citizens, or even as, let me say, women. And in terms of our statistics, in the year under review, 102 of these cases were on the court roll. So that is a positive step.
So 102 have gone on to the court roll, perhaps at various stages, including sometimes, I imagine, at the stage of trial. But just tell me about who the victims typically are of these rapes. Is it police officers allegedly, and in some instances confirmed to have raped ordinary citizens, or is it that power dynamic of having control over someone's liberty in the cells?
It's a number of victims. You have children, because sometimes you find that officers have raped their children of their daughters. It's women that are raped in the cells. It's also sometimes officers themselves being raped by their partner. But it's like a variety, let me say, of victims. Like I say, it's just ordinary women. Most of these happen in the cells or in the offices, in the police stations, or at home, where in confined spaces where you find that an officer has raped a child or their own stepchildren or a child in a community.
Yeah. Needless to say, Lizzie, this erodes significantly the trust that South Africans have in the SAPS. Just tell me about that impact, as well as whether there are any kind of lines of communication between yourselves and the Ministry of Police, the Commissioner, and others to deal with this as a recurring problem, because I believe it is it not?
It is a concern. And yes, once we've concluded our investigation, it's a two-pronged process. Because rape is a criminal offense, the docket has to be referred to the NPA for a decision to prosecute. But when it comes to the police, we do make recommendations to the police to say, can you please act against your member or institute disciplinary processes. Apart from that, we do engage with police management on the on these very statistics and the type of sanctions that they impose, because at times we get concerned that a sanction does not warrant the transgression. So we do have those regular interactions with the police management. But also at station level, we have what we call station lectures, where we go to those problematic stations, engage with the officers themselves, trying to encourage them that whatever they do, not only in terms of rape, but in terms of all these other matters that we investigate, to say, please work within the confines of the law when you execute your duty.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time this morning. That's Liz Shuping. She is the spokesperson for the IPID.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning, Midrand, recovering after an earlier crash. The M1 South crashing between Samrand and Oliphant. It has been cleared, but left a heavy backlog as far as Brockfontein and Durban this morning. The usual breakdown on the N2 South there at Clare Road Bridge. Delays coming from Inanda Road through Mgeta Road and your way slowly towards Spaghetti Junction. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
Abafana Best 10 are pumped up to get to the round of 16. But the Chili Boys believe they will display a happy walk after the final whistle. This is the Nedbank Cup round of 32. Golden Arrows FC versus Chippa United FC on Saturday, 25 January at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag the morning brief.
7 minutes to 7. The ongoing tribunal investigating allegations of sexual harassment leveled at Judge President of the Eastern Cape, Selby Mbenenge, has brought focus on power dynamics that allow for sexual harassment in the workplace. Andiswa Mengo, a secretary who works in the Eastern Cape Division, has accused the Judge President of making unwanted sexual advances. Her testimony raises crucial questions about about how professionals should behave towards one another and what constitutes sexual harassment within the workplace. And for that, let's turn now to Advocate Gail Blanchard, who is a labor law expert. Good morning to you, Advocate, and thank you for your time. I don't know how much time you've had to catch some of the proceedings and perhaps some of the debates at the very least that have ensued. Just your broad brush strokes for me, your major takeouts from what you've heard of the debate around these hearings and what they show us about how sexual harassment manifests in the workplace.
Thank you very much. What I can tell you is the law of sexual harassment is all contained within the Employment Equity Act. And it doesn't matter what your position is, whether you're a secretary, if you're the judge president, the law applies to you. And as an employer, you have a responsibility to ensure that there's no sexual harassment in the workplace. Basically, the law is based on the Code of Good Practice on the handling of sexual harassment cases in the workplace. And if you look at the code, it gives you a test for sexual harassment, and it basically tells you that sexual harassment is unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature that violates the rights of an employee and constitutes a barrier to equity in the workplace, taking into account certain factors. So, first of all, whether the harassment is on the prohibited grounds of sex or gender or sexual orientation, whether the conduct was unwelcome, and that's one of the most important aspects. Was the conduct welcome? And in this situation, it clearly was unwelcome. The nature and extent of the conduct. So we have to look at issues like that and the impact of the conduct on the employee. So the secretary was obviously an employee of the Department of Justice. The conduct was unwelcome, and therefore she followed these policies and procedures that are in place for sexual harassment. Every organization should have policies and procedures of how the matter must be dealt with. And also there's further, within the Act, you'll see that there are factors to establish sexual harassment. So sexual harassment looks at a form of discrimination within the in our law.
Yeah. So from that test that you just described in that definition, you mentioned, and I think twice you highlighted the issue of whether or not the conduct was unwelcome. How complicated does it make the case when that becomes blurred at the very least and questioned whether was it unwelcomed or was it actually the opposite? And how often do you have instances where that is challenged as an element by the person who is accused, challenging that as an element to say, I see everything, I accept that I behaved in this way, but I challenge this element of it was unwelcome?
Well, that often happens. That's definitely a situation because the complainant must show an element of unwelcomeness. That is really important. So there's various ways of showing it. For example, a complainant must show if it was unwelcome, she must be able to prove, for example, if you make a statement towards the complainant, just a statement, if the complainant indicates by walking away, refusing to answer the question, there must be some way of showing to her or his dissatisfaction in the situation. If there can be a situation where a complainant feels compelled to respond, but then otherwise, then afterwards, in evidence, must be able to show why or justify why they behaved in that particular manner.
And then when dealing with these matters, Advocate, and I'm wondering, because we have the benefit of seeing it playing out in public, and in this instance, we are told it's inquisitorial, so not adversarial in the traditional sense of a criminal trial. Are there certain nuances and perhaps sensitivities about how the person accused is able to then challenge some of these elements? How rigorous, for instance, have you seen people who are accused of sexual harassment go in terms of cross-examination and sensitivities around the subject matter with which we are dealing?
Well, you've got to understand that first of all, you've got to understand the law around it. If a complainant lodges complaints within the workplace of sexual harassment, the employer is bound to take action against it, and that's in terms of Section 60 of the Employment Equity Act. The employer can almost step into the shoes of the complainant, and he has to take the situation very seriously and has to deal with the situation. You've also got to understand there's been a complaint of sexual harassment. This may lead into other complaints of sexual harassment in the workplace. So you can't always deal with it in isolation. You've got to deal with it very seriously. And if a complainant feels that they don't want, they've got two choices. They've either got to adopt an informal or formal process. A complainant has a choice whether they want to deal with it in a formal manner or an informal manner. If they feel it wasn't a serious situation, maybe it can be dealt with in an informal manner, in that you can just sit around a table and discuss this. For example, if it was just an inappropriate statement, you may be able to just sit around the table and explain to the perpetrator that you don't behave like this in a workplace.
Yeah.
But if it's a more serious situation like this, even if the complainant feels they don't want to handle it in a formal manner, the employer may feel that the matter is so serious that they are going to deal with it in a formal matter. And this is being dealt with in a formal matter and is highly inquisitorial. And it can be full cross-examination here because any other person in the workplace may be affected by this.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights this morning. That is Advocate Gail Blanchard, who is a labor law expert. Let's check in now with N. Musa with the latest news.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, DA's legal challenge over expropriation bill and public protector assists mothers with maintenance claims. Good morning. The DA says it will challenge the Expropriation Act. The party says it's in discussion with its legal team to formulate their case. This follows President Cyril Ramaphosa signing the expropriation bill into law yesterday. The act sets out how the organs of state may expropriate the land in the public interest for varied reasons. DA's national spokesperson, Willie Oukamp, elaborates.
The Democratic Alliance strongly reiterates our opposition to the expropriation bill which President Cyril Ramaphosa has now signed into law. While the DA recognizes that the Constitution allows for acts of redress and restitution, including land reform, we have serious reservations about the procedure as well as important substantive aspects of the bill.
Meanwhile, Deputy Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Sihle Zikalala, says the signing into law of the expropriation bill will unlock land for socio-economic development and for distributive purposes.
It's not a political issue. This is a socio-economic issue. Buildings in cities that are dilapidated, they cannot be expropriated because there is no expropriation act that is clear. You have servitude that must be expropriated from certain farms that cannot be expropriated, and now that will be expropriated.
Police have arrested a woman on charges of possession of child pornography and money laundering in Houghton, north of Johannesburg. The 25-year-old, who's a web designer by profession, is said to be the girlfriend of Darren Wilkin, who was arrested last week after being found in possession of over 10 million images and videos of child pornography. Police spokesperson Amanda van Wyk says the woman is expected to appear before the Randburg Magistrates Court on Monday.
An intensive investigation by the SECI units uncovered evidence linking the women to criminal activities, including the possession of an estimated 10 million child pornography images and videos. These materials were discovered on various electronic devices seized during an operation on Friday, the 17th of January. Further investigations continue.
The Office of the Public Protector in the Northern Cape has stepped in to help mothers battling the courts for child maintenance. The Public Protector's Office says it's inundated with many requests to step in amid delays and failure to hold fathers accountable. The Office of the Public Protector conducted public hearings in Galashiwe in Kimberley. Chief Investigator in the office, Baldwin Neshunzi, says they received a number of complaints from the public wanting to be assisted with maintenance claims.
The main challenges that we experience or we encounter relates to undue delay in the processing of the application and the payment thereof.
The University of Cape Town, UCT, says it has received nearly 100,000 applications from prospective first-year students for the 2025 academic year. However, it only has places for 4,500 first-year students. UCT, along with other universities across South Africa, have been under pressure over the last few years as the number of applications continue to grow annually. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order declassifying files related to the assassinations of former President John F. Kennedy, his brother and former Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, as well as former civil rights leader Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Showan Bryce Peace reports.
Trump earlier indicated that he would make the files public in order to signal a restoration of transparency and accountability to government and reverse the overclassification of government records. According to the National Archives and Records Administration, about 97% of the millions of pages related to the assassination of JFK had already been made public. The current order instructs the Director of National Intelligence and the Attorney General to present a plan within 15 days for the full and complete release of records related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. The order also determines that the release of info related to the assassinations of RFK and Dr. King would be in the public interest.
Recapping the top story, the DA says it will challenge the Expropriation Act. The party says it's in discussion with its legal team to formulate their case. This follows President Cyril Ramaphosa signing the expropriation bill into law yesterday. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
This January, to save money, you could turn off the house lights and use your cell phone's flashlight. Or you could switch to Outsurance and save on your car insurance premium. Get a quote, and if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash. And make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Lots of traffic lights out all over 4 ways. William Mandela coming from Dane Fern through towards Sloane, very heavy. Loads of lights out on Malabongwe from Kaya Sand right through to Stratham Park. So big backlogs on that run through as well this morning. The N1 South at Olifantsfontein, that crash is being cleared. Traffic is busy, but it's easy. And Durban, breakdowns both sides of Spaghetti Junction. Northbound before the interchange. Coming from the M7, it's heavy. Southbound around Clare Road Bridge from Inanda Road, heading down through Umgena Road to 4 level. That's quite heavy as well. Delays both sides there. Cape Town's M1 inbound, pretty slow. Blattercliff Hill down towards Sable Road is the extent of the delay. And the R300 queuing this morning, coming up from Stellenbosch Arterial. There's just a bit of a queue on your way through the Funrippic Road, the Cales River exit. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headlines Soccer News. The assistant coach of Kaizer Chiefs, Khalil Ben Yusuf, says they are targeting the league title in 2 or 3 years from now. And in tennis, from the Rod Laver Arena, it's Alexander Zverev who strikes first, taking the opening set in a tiebreak against Novak Djokovic. Details around 7:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
9 minutes after 7 on this Friday. It's good to be in your company. This is the Morning Brief on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane, here to deliver it to you. So there are a few stories that we started talking about yesterday that we thought we should take forward today and perhaps keep them in the limelight a little longer and under the spotlight a little longer, hopefully with some impact. One of them has to do with the invitation that that Parliament is extending to the country's major banks to talk about their lending practices. You'll remember that yesterday I spoke to Mzwandile Masina, who was saying that they are concerned and from what they've been receiving from ordinary South Africans asking them to probe this matter, there's an impression that it is easier to get credit from the banks if your intention is consumption, so credit cards and the like. But it is harder when you want to use that credit for production. So we are going to take that conversation forward a little bit and just examine a bit more the lending practices of our country's banks. The other story that we started focusing on yesterday has to do with the massive sinkholes that have been a problem in the township of Khutsong in the west of Gauteng for decades, really. And we will now be looking at the legal aspects thereof and looking at the extent to which people can have recourse in as far as the damage caused by those sinkholes in that area. And also we'll touch a bit on issues around Stockfells. You remember yesterday we took a call where one of our listeners, was talking about being unhappy about the rules of the constitution of their Stockfell, and there was a bit of concern there. So we'll try and clarify what are some of the rules that are applicable. But of course, all the big debates that we've been having this morning, including the signing into law of the expropriation bill that has now become an act. Weigh in on all of those. Give me a call. The number to dial 086 000 2032, as well as your WhatsApp voice notes. Please send them to 061 410 4107. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The second hour of the Friday edition of The Morning Brief starts now.
Whether you're having a early, snoozy, tantrumy, chill, frustrating, or jokey morning. Mornings love McDonald's, so choose happy and enjoy a Burry Burger double and a short filter coffee for only R39.90 from 6 to 10:30 a.m. at McDonald's.
Life-changing wins can happen when you play on the National Lottery. Just like the Lucky Powerball Plus winner who won over 33 million rand on Tuesday. Play Powerball for an estimated 100 million rand jackpot this Friday and you could be next. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. E2 is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
This January, to save money, you could carpool with your not-so-friendly neighbor, or you could switch to Outsurance and save on your car insurance premium. Get a quote, and if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash, and make that 1,500 Rand cash if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. SMS OUT to 30754. That's OUT to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
This is Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief.
So let's start this hour here now. In February, the country's major banks will be invited to Parliament's Trade, Industry and Competition Portfolio Committee to answer questions regarding their credit lending practices. The banks will be asked to explain why they appear more willing to extend credit for consumption rather than for production. The banks will have to provide crucial insights into the barriers to productive credit and the steps needed to enhance financial inclusion and support economic development in the country. Let's speak now to Emerald van Zyl, who is an investigative financial consultant. Good morning to you, Emerald, and thank you for your time this morning. Is this invitation and this kind of inquiry that Mzwandile Masina and his committee are triggering, is it necessary at this point?
I really welcome this investigation. It's been needed for about 20 years already. Let me explain that consumer protection in South Africa, like many other state identities or organizations in South Africa, has collapsed since the ANC came into power in 1994. Many top ANC members, like names that comes up in my mind, Tokyo Sikwale, Cyril Ramaphosa, many others, under BEE became directors of banks. So they were basically involved in the board of directors' decisions. This leads to discrimination in a very, very big way. I've got people, black people if I might say, and I really feel for them, that pay on their motor cars with Westbank 7-8% more on their motor vehicles. I mean, then you take the other part, FNB, who's also Westbank is part of FNB, on housing loans, charge people 2-4% more, black people. There is no ways that these people can financially survive.
Mm. So explain a bit more there, Emerald, these lending practices that you allude to. And of course, given what you are saying about that particular institution, Westbank and FNB, naturally we'll have to give them a right of reply. But from your observation and your experience, What underlies some of these instances where you allege that black customers are charged far much more?
I've got all the evidence to prove that, and I would wish, and I will request Parliament or the Portfolio Committee to include me in the investigation, because I'm sitting with all the evidence to prove that when they testify, the banks testify in front of the Portfolio Committee, all they're going to do is to go cover up. If the Portfolio Committee has got documentational proof to prove to them that there is discrimination, that's going to make it so much stronger. For example, Westbank advertised or published on social media that interest rate on motor vehicle is determined on two factors. One, affordability, and second, credit worthiness. Now, that means, and the law is very clear, that your motor vehicle installment cannot be more than 30% of your salary. So I can say clearly that everybody that's got currently a motor vehicle loan can afford it. We all know that with the slightest credit risk on your credit profile, you will not obtain a motor vehicle finance loan. So everybody at this present who's got a motor vehicle finance loan is credit worthy.
Yeah.
Now, the question I want them to answer me, and I never get questions back from Westbank, is why is certain people paying 11.25% on their motor vehicles and others pay 19% interest?
Sure.
And it happens to be that the one that's paying 19% happens to be black.
Emerald, very quickly, have the banks taken you to task over some of the claims that you make? I can't imagine that they would take these claims lying down.
Well, the fact of the matter is, on my comment on X, my post on X, I had threats that they're going to take and ask me to remove it. I said, please do, because it's in public interest, and it's true. And no court will ever allow or grant that order for me to remove it.
Yeah, all right. Thank you for your time this morning, Emerald. It sure is shaping up to be quite a crucial and from what you say, a really necessary debate that the Portfolio Committee has triggered around the practices of our country's banks.
The Queens of South Africa's beautiful game are taking a break from their pitch duties to dress up and walk on the purple carpet. It's a special evening to celebrate players, coaches, administrators, and officials for their incredible devotion to the game. This is the Hollywoodbet Super League Awards 2024. From grassroots to glory. Witness the Hollywoodbet Super League Awards on Sunday, 26 January at 7:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Ever since Uspilion won 5,000 rand, 5 hour on Wheel of Fortune, he only wears white push-in sandals, star white, Baba, and he owns 10 identical pairs. And before he did not even know the Queen's language. Now, Kalabo, wow. Chance, let's watch Wheel of Fortune weekdays, Monday to Friday at 7:30 on S3 and see how one spin changed Spillion's life and how it can change ours as well in just one day.
During Ford Blue Sky offers, you can get a new Ford Territory Ambiente from just $6,199 per month, including our optional service plan. 10% deposit, primeless 5.25%, 40% residual. Visit your trusted Ford dealer today for Blue Sky offers where our Ford family guarantee comes standard. Limited time offer while stocks last. T&Cs apply.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag the morning brief.
7:20. Residents of Khutsong and Carltonville in Mirafong in the west of Gauteng have given a petition to the Select Committee on Public Petitions and Executive Undertakings in which they say that sinkholes have left many families displaced and have also affected water quality and damaged infrastructure in the area. The residents say they fear losing their homes to sinkholes after several of them appeared, over the last few years, really. Sinkholes are common in the area, and residents have complained about them for decades, for years, if not decades. I'm joined now by Advocate Moya Habo Sebieni, a practicing advocate of the High Court. Good morning to you, Advocate, and thank you for your time. We wanted to take the conversation forward. When you look at the pictures coming out of Khutsong, they are absolutely heartbreaking because, you've got the one that's burnt on my mind is all the way to almost the doorstep of a house. The sinkhole goes, making it impossible for anyone to really live within that home. I wanted to find out what the law is around, firstly, let's start with compelling government to do something about that situation.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. You see, the bottom line about civil liability is that any party that feels aggrieved needs to prove that there is someone that is responsible or liable for whatever the cause of concern they have. And the law looks at people. In fact, we use the term person or party, where government, either in the form of provincial, local, or national, then it's identified also as a party. So for so long as someone else can be able to establish to a court of law that this particular person is liable to can attend to my concerns, then the court will be prepared to listen, and depending on the evidence that is led, then whomever that makes a persuading case will succeed. So coming back to sinkholes and in their nature, we have got a principle in common law that is called vis major. That's almost described as something like an act of nature, something that no one else has caused it. So now, when you look at it from the perspective of that definition, anyone who complains that, look, there is a sinkhole that I'm suffering from, it has just rendered my property worthless and all that. That person needs, before they can complain, from a damages civil liability perspective, they need to gather evidence to prove who is liable for what they have suffered in the form of damages.
Yeah.
But now, because we live in a constitutional democracy, since the advent of our constitution, it turns out that the constitution confers the responsibility on government at all levels to ensure that people have got a right to a decent place of living, which is the reason why in all eviction cases you will find the municipalities being cited as a party. This is to make sure that in the event where the applicant is successful, that particular sphere of government is then responsible for having some alternative arrangements in place for a person to find a space to relocate to.
So let me pull at one of the threads there that you highlighted, Advocate. The whole issue around whether or not the event that leads to damage to your property is an act of nature. Just from observation, without knowing the intricacies, etc., of how a case would shape up in Khutsong, it surely can't be said that it's an act of nature in the sense that the damage is foreseeable, and I imagine that there's a duty on the government to act, which duty, by all accounts, is being neglected. So I don't know, just your thinking, whether or not that could be raised to say this is an act of nature. If sinkholes occur, tough luck.
You see, if you are raising a very interesting point, if you start with saying it's just an act of nature and tough luck, then it makes sense. But if then you are dealing with a situation where there was foresight, either on any of the concerned parties, it can be the municipality, it can be maybe a person who is a previous seller, they just sold you the property whilst they knew at the time and concealed the information to the effect that there was sinkhole. In that case, now the principle changes, because you concealed what ought to have been known on your part. then there is no way you can escape liability. So anyone who can then wish to hold that particular level of government responsible, they need to gather evidence and consult with their attorneys to establish one thing in the main, being that the municipality in that area had known all along that there was a potential chance of a sinkhole coming across to manifest itself. In that case, then there is no way that the court would not likely find in favor of that particular person complaining.
All right, thank you for your time this morning and your insights. That's Advocate Moyahabo Sebieni, a practicing advocate of the High Court.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag the morning brief.
So towards the end of the show yesterday, we took a call, one of our listeners concerned about the rules that are applicable in their stokvel. Well, stokvels are popular community-based savings or investment groups, typically formed to help members save money, pool resources, or assist with financial needs. However, sometimes situations arise where the rules and constitutions of stokvels are tested. Let's speak now to Andrew Lukele, who is the founder and chairperson of the National Stokvel Association of South Africa. Good morning to you, Andrew, and thank you for your time this morning. We thought we'd invite you because of that call that we took yesterday. The concern there was about the time period, the notice period that is needed for a member to withdraw from the stokvel, as well as the payment, the time that it takes to pay them what they've contributed up to that point of their exit. What's your understanding of the lay of the land around regulation of constitutions and rules of stokvels around these matters?
Good morning to us. Let me explain that stokvels are voluntary associations or organizations, and people join those stokvels based on their understanding of what that stokvel stands for. Now, let's talk about the rules, the constitution, and the recourse. Now, stokvels are responsible for setting out the rules that will govern their operations. Stokvels are self-regulatory organizations, so there's no one who can impose rules that must govern a stokvel. Now, when you form a stokvel, you set the rules as a collective. Those rules can be 5. They don't have to be many, 5. You know, what is the name of our group? That name must reflect what we stand for. How many are going to be as members? How much are we going to contribute? How often are we going to contribute? The intervals, weekly or fortnightly or monthly. You know, in the event of someone doing something wrong, this is what we're going to do. Those rules, most of the time, they're not written down. You know, they're being memorized in people's heads. Stokvels have been in existence for many years using that technique.
Yeah.
But the problem, you're right, is the issue of the recourse. When something goes wrong, it's difficult for any law enforcement agency to understand who did what. So that is why we advocate for people to have constitutions, something written down, so that when something goes wrong, you can go to the police, end up in the court, and you can point out a clause 6, which was
of the Constitution. But what about standardization, Andrew? Standardization of, I don't know, having like a bare minimum to say your constitutions cannot fall beneath this minimum standard. For example, talking about a 6-month notice period to withdraw. Surely that falls on the unreasonable side of things. If I'm in financial difficulty and can no longer contribute, I need to be able to exit as soon as possible. 6 months commitment, that doesn't sound reasonable to me. I'm just imagining if you as an association should not be proactive to say we need a minimum code of conduct.
No, you're correct. I think, look, in this situation, honestly, I don't have details of what actually went wrong. But, see, the problem with members is that when they join, you know, those rules were there when they joined. Like any other T's and C's that people talk about. People don't look at things when they go and join organizations. When a problem arises, is then that they raise issues.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure when did that member realize, did that member have a constitution
All right.
before he joined or whatever? I don't know.
All right, Andrew, no, that's fine. If you don't mind, we will ask that caller to just call us back, and perhaps we can connect them with you and see if they can be assisted one way or another. That's Andrew Lokele, who is the founder and chairperson of the National Stokvel Association of South Africa. Let's turn now to Ann Musa with the latest news headlines.
Thanks, Thulas. Good morning. In the headlines, the ANC caucus in Parliament has welcomed the signing into law of the expropriation bill. The Judicial Conduct Tribunal probing sexual harassment allegations against the Eastern Cape Judge President, Selby Mbenenge, will go into its 10th day of hearings today with the continuation of the cross-examination of complainant, the judge's secretary, Andiswa Mengo. And Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Pax Tau says government has met with the Mittal family, the majority owners of ArcelorMittal. Tau says this happened on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Pretoria, first up, the Dustford Tunnel, all jammed up. Bremer Street down to Transylvania. It's traffic lights on the south side of the tunnel in that part of Pretoria that are offline, causing delays. Malabongwe Drive, Kayasana Street and Park, very heavy. Lack of traffic lights there. Also the Dane Fern area on William Mandela, just north of Four Ways. Loads of big junctions there without traffic lights, causing delays as well. Durban, a breakdown into south near Clare Road Bridge, still causing a backlog coming through towards Spaghetti Junction. Very heavy this morning. M7 from Hunstedman in up over St John's Avenue Bridge into Pinetown. One of those really busy days. Cape Town, Jakes Kerville, Fort Trekker Road, traffic all over that junction in the heart of Goodwood territory. And Marine Drive, clocking in for a Friday. We've got some queues between Bayside Mall and the Paddocks Mall in the Milnerton area. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Hey, good morning to you once again, Zai. So it would seem Kaizer Chiefs may soon no longer be the butt of jokes as far as lifting a league title is concerned.
What do you mean, Thulas?
I don't know. That's what they're saying. You are telling me. Tell me more.
I'll tell you more. Okay, so let's just say that patience is a virtue, okay? I'm a cozy fans because I think Kaizer Chiefs are focusing on the long game. And I know we've been saying next season is our season for the past 10 years now, but the assistant coach, Khalil Ben Yusuf, says they have a plan and they want to compete for the league 2 or 3 years from now. And he was speaking in a Nedbank Cup press conference ahead of their last 32 game against lower division side Free Agents FC. Ben Yusuf saying winning this tournament is one of their primary targets. Previously, Chiefs have struggled against lower division teams in the tournament. Here's Ben Yusuf.
You know, from the starting of the game, what we have to do. We prepare everything about this team. We saw a lot of game. The last 5 games, we saw a lot of game. I think our players, they know what they have. Not big experience, but they have little experience that they know. Because this kind of problem, we had it last season or the season before when we played against lower division and Australia. So I think it's for us to working, and that the players they know it's what they have to do in this game.
Now, Stellenbosch FC, they returned to winning ways in style in the Betway Premiership. They hammered AmaZulu FC 5-0 at the King Zwelithini Stadium last night. What a win. Stellies climbing to 7th spot in the league. And coach Steve Barker's side will be looking to make it back-to-back wins. They host Kruger United. That's in the Nedbank Cup on the 28th of January. Usutu, on the other hand, slipped down to 10th in the standings. And they'll be looking to return to winning ways against Mighty Eagles in the Nedbank Cup, also on the 28th of January. Elsewhere, Son Heung-min helped Tottenham gain some respite from their Premier League woes with a 3-2 Europa League win at Hoffenheim to put them on course for the knockout rounds. In the meantime, Bruno Fernandes scored a stoppage time winner for Manchester United. They beat Rangers 2-1 at Old Trafford despite Cyril Dresser's late equaliser. And cricket action, the Paarl Royals crushed the Durban Super Giants by 5 wickets with 15 balls to spare in their Betway SA20 clash at Kingsmead in Durban last night. The 4 points gained enabled them to increase their lead at the top of the table with their 5th victory. Now, Durban Super Giants remain marooned at the bottom of the table. They'll need 3 victories on the road to have any chance of qualification. Here's their coach, Lance Klusner.
We've got a group of very good players who just haven't really found their form, unfortunately. And, that's cricket sometimes, but I think rather than dwelling on the past, we've got an opportunity ahead of us. I'm pretty certain 5 wins will qualify us, and that's pretty much all we're interested in the moment. I just think with the quality in that dressing room, it just takes someone to light the fire and get them going.
Tennis action, Madison Keys saved a match point before stunning world number 2 Iga Swiatek to set up an Australian Open final against the 2-time defending champion Aryna Sabalenka. Keys claimed a shock 5-7, 6-1, 7-6 victory over the 5-time Grand Slam champion Swiatek to reach the second major final of her career. Here's Madison Keys.
I think I'm still trying to come down and figure out where I am, but really proud of myself for being able to stay in that. Obviously being up in the third and feeling like I was so close to the finish line and losing my serve, and then being able to just kind of stay as close as I could in that tiebreaker until the end. Just really proud of myself for that match.
And in a dramatic turn of events at the Rod Laver Arena, the much-anticipated Australian Open semi-final between Novak Djokovic and Alexander Zverev ended prematurely as Djokovic gave a walkover. Zverev, seeded second, took the opening set in a thriller. It was a tie-break, 7-6 before the match was halted. Zverev's form, coupled with Djokovic's unexpected withdrawal, secures the German spot in the final. And that's a wrap of your sport. We'll serve up more at the top of the hour. For SAFM, I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Right, let's say good morning once again to Ntaoleng Lechela. So Ntaoleng, tell me about, is it Puma or Puma? I've heard all sorts of pronunciation. I believe it's Puma. Tell me about Puma and their shares being under pressure.
So the firm's stock plunged close to 23% in yesterday's trading session, the biggest drop in more than 20 years to us. Now, this comes after the German sportswear brand reported disappointing fourth-quarter sales and a decline in annual profits. The weak update raised concerns about Puma's ability to compete with bigger rivals Adidas and Nike in the $400 billion global sportswear market. Puma's sales growth of 9.8% in currency-adjusted terms fell short of analyst expectations of 12%. Net profit declined to 282 million euros from 305 million euros, partly due to higher interest payments on its debt. Now, the disappointing update comes after Adidas reported strong sales and profitability, highlighting the challenges Puma faces in boosting its brand and gaining market share. We also had newer brands like On Running and Hoka having disrupted the sportswear industry, eroding the dominance of Nike and creating more competition for shelf space at top retailers. Now, Puma has launched a cost-cutting program, with many expecting job cuts from the firm. Meanwhile, analysts at Barclays have expressed concerns that the cost-cutting drive may divert management's focus away from increasing sales. Puma is scheduled to provide more detailed guidance when it publishes its full-year report on the 12th of March. So we'll get more insights on that cost-cutting program, as well as how it plans to increase sales.
Tell me a bit more about Cash Build and the improving sales that they are seeing.
That's right, Sheila. So building materials retailer Cash Build seems to be on the road to recovery. It delivered a 6% increase in revenue for the second quarter of its 2025 financial year. The growth was fueled by a combination of existing store sales and contributions from newly opened locations. The company's existing stores, totaling 309, delivered a 5% increase in revenue, while 9 new stores opened since July 2023 added 1% to the overall revenue growth. This upward trend brings the total revenue growth for the half year ended December to 5% compared to the previous half year. Now, transaction volumes at the till also rose for the quarter, with existing stores reporting a 7% increase. The company attributes its revenue performance to robust growth in its South African operations in particular, which accounted for 83% of total sales. Now, Cashbuild has been actively investing in its operations, including the introduction of new store formats and refurbishment of existing stores. The company's total store count now stands at 318, following the opening of 3 new stores, closure of 6 underperforming stores, and the refurbishment of 11 stores during the quarter. Despite facing challenges in the building materials retail sector, including increased competition from low-quality imports and slowing consumer demand. I mean, even yesterday we spoke about retail sales and that hardware segment, the only segment recording slowing sales in November. Cashbuild, however, remains optimistic about its prospects for the year. The company believes that government initiatives such as the infrastructure programs and the 2-pot retirement system will stimulate economic growth and then further benefit the retail sector moving forward.
All right, please give us our second roundup of the markets for this morning.
Starting off in Asia, some indices retreated with trade mixed. Traders are digesting the Bank of Japan's recent rate hike while also assessing comments from Trump. With that, the Japanese Nikkei is pretty flat, up 0.05% this morning. In the U.S., futures also flat, trending lower, a stark difference from yesterday's close. Markets there eyeing earnings for further insight on the health of corporate America. And then coming back home, sentiment quite sour with the JSE in the red. The all shares slipping 0.8% in yesterday's trading session. The mood, however, a bit more upbeat in the currency market as the rand trades stronger, benefiting from a steady dollar. It's sitting at 18.42 to the greenback this hour.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ntauleng Lechela. She'll be back with one more update for you just before the resumption of trade on the JSE. And look out for that update at just after 8:30 here on The Morning Brief.
Africa Update on SAFM.
Let's say good morning to Sipho Mantula. Good morning to you, Raz. So let's start in Sudan. The exodus of people escaping the conflict out of Sudan continues.
Refreshing morning, Thulas and Jumbo Africa to the listeners. Indeed, Thulas, what we are picking up from the United Nations report there is that almost 710,000 people have crossed through the Jordan border to the South Sudan. At the same time, you have the Sudanese army also clashing with the Rapid Support Force over the oil refinery near Khartoum. Now, what is the challenge here, Thulas, is that even if you are having all this crisis going on, I mean, you have refugees, you have the border conflicts. Also, what you are having now, it is the issue of what is happening with the mediation efforts coming from the AU, from Turkey, from the UN. What is really happening to us when we see that Sudan, it seems it's been forgotten. Hence, yesterday when we touched on the counter-terrorism in the continent, Sudan becomes one of the case studies.
And tell me about the elections upcoming in Gabon. Does this mean the end of military rule, or will it be controlled in some kind of way?
Remember, Thulas, I've said it before, being in the name of the father, the son, and the cousin. Here we talk of General Bryce Oligui Nguema, who led that 2023 coup. That this week they have pronounced, Thulas, that the 12th of April will be the presidential election date, as they have confirmed. And remember, as I said, this week they have agreed that the presidential term will be for 7 years, and they allow also the military judicial officers to engage in those elections as candidates. So, Thulas, let's hope the electorates in Gabon will give power back to the civilians.
Yeah. Tell me a bit more about the use of skin lightening products in Nigeria. It's caused a bit of a concern.
No, definitely, but it is across the whole continent, because there was a regional awareness raising workshop in Gabon. Now, when you look, West Africa has been lamenting around this skin bleaching products. But when you look at the stats of World Health Organization, Nigeria sits at 77%, followed by Congo, Brazzaville at 66%, Ghana 50%. South Africa at 32 and Mali at 25%, and they are pushing to us that they should ban all these the skin bleaching products, because some of the issues are, it's been said it is wealth, it's beauty, achievements, but also it has a side effects, and at the same time it makes Africans to be the runaway from themselves.
And then let's talk a bit about the continent's richest man, Aliko Dangote. He doesn't hold back in letting his frustrations known about traveling across the continent, does he?
Absolutely, Tulas, and we know that the issues are around the visa troubles, Tulas, the visa paradox. When you look at a few countries in Africa have allowed the visa-free access to all Africans. We know Ghana this year has said that they will allow Africans to move without the visa. The other issue is the issue of crime, Tulas, that people will talk about crime, that you cannot allow people to move as they wish. And also this paradox that I've raised, it also affects the free movement of persons protocol that was agreed by the AU in 2018 to last. Only 33 member states have signed, only 4 ratified. This is the challenge that we have in the continent when we are talking of the continental free trade to us. And at the same time, the issue of the cost. Why in the continent are we still having this issue of cost of people traveling at the same time have to pay visas? And I think this rich man is raising this frustration to the AU.
Yeah, when we have time, I'll tell you about my ordeal arriving in Nigeria, and I had a visa, but, that wasn't sufficient. I still had quite the rigmarole to navigate, but, we don't have time. Let's focus on this now. I like what you did here, Sipho, with your historical archives, taking us to a major event that occurred during this week in January 1879. Tell me a bit more about that.
Tulas, it's almost 146 years when you talk of the Battle of Isandlwane. We have to always remember this battle between the British Empire and the Zulu Kingdom. What is interesting, Tulas, we have our cultural activist, Mbuso Khoza, who has done a great work, Tulas, by putting what I call a musical play around the history of Isandlwane that is currently going on in Gauteng, Joburg Theatre, even today and tomorrow, Tulas, for our listeners and young people who want to track the history of what really happened 146 years ago with this battle of the British colonial powers, trying to occupy and capture the Zulu Kingdom. And we know, Tulas, the Africans were able to win that battle of Isandlwane, as it is known, and it has been celebrated every year in January in South Africa. Asante sana, Tulas, as was leading the conversation, SFM, observing the Education Month.
All right, thank you for that. That's Sipho Mantula there with just a flavor and a sampling of some of the key developments around the continent and its diaspora.
We definitely know what good insurance is. Our insurance don't delay when it comes to any claims. If something happens to one of our vehicles on the road, service delivery is the main thing.
They make sure that you are a satisfied customer from the beginning to the end.
It's definitely a win-win with our insurance.
Switch to Business Outsurance today and you could get a massive 20% discount on your business insurance premium. SMS quote to 43328. That's quote to 43328 to switch and save today. Licensed insurer and FSP. TCs and information online. The Natal Rich Boys want to demonstrate their wealth with a win to reach the last 16. But the Buccaneers say they will illustrate why they are the reigning champions. This is the Nedbank Cup Round of 32. Richards Bay FC battles it out with Orlando Pirates FC this Sunday, 26 January at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
A route to avoid in Joburg this morning, Main Reef and Nasrec. There's been quite a big crash there. Main Reef in from Robertville, Industrial side, and Nasrec coming up from the stadium. Quite heavy backlogs. To Allendale Road, if you're leaving the Tembisa side, heading across to Midrand, just factor in a heavy queue down towards that Mastiff Road territory. And Pretoria East, no lights on Gasfontein and Struben. And that's causing quite a heavy backlog of traffic, not only Pretoria bound, but also heading the other way as well. Durban, a lot of traffic on the M4, Blue Lagoon up towards Virginia Airport. leaving Umhlanga towards Virginia Airport. That's quite slow go as well. And some pressure on the M4, the Southern Freeway, just heading up towards the M7 Bluff exit. That's a little bit slow as you come from the Clarewood side. Cape Town this morning, N2 into town, pretty clear through Khayelitsha. You'll pick up the traffic from from the Jakes Hill Drive. N7 exit going into Hospital Bend. And Marine Drive that we mentioned, slow coming out of Tableview, starting to ease as you head down towards Milnerton. A lot of pressure in the South Peninsula, the Baden-Powell onto the beachfront at Muizenberg through the main roads busy, and then main road through St James in towards Cork Bay, all jammed up. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
Owning a small or medium-sized business takes courage, skill, and determination. The Clientele Legal Business Plan is there to protect, guide, and assist your business in managing the legal risks. Let us handle your labor matters, employment contracts, CCMA referrals, and so much more. Our team of professional lawyers are standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 42770. That's SAFM to 42770. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Ever since Uspilion won 5,000 rand, 5 tower on Wheel of Fortune, he only wears white push-in sandals. Star white, Baba. And he owns 10 identical pairs. And before he did not even know the Queen's language. Now, Kalabo, wow. Gents, let's watch Wheel of Fortune weekdays, Monday to Friday at 7:30 on S3 and see how one spin changed Spillion's life and how it can change ours as well in just one day.
Life-changing wins can happen when you play on the National Lottery. Just like the Lucky Powerball Plus winner who won over 33 million rand on Tuesday. Play Powerball for an estimated 100 million rand jackpot this Friday and you could be next. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. E2 is the proud operator of the National Lottery. Abafana Bestende are pumped up to get to the round of 16, but the Chili Boys believe they will display a happy walk after the final whistle. This is the Nedbank Cup round of 32. Golden Arrows FC versus Chipa United FC on Saturday, 25 January at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The only talk radio morning breakfast show that makes sense. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
So let's turn to that conversation we started earlier on. I did highlight to you the signing into law of the expropriation, what was a bill until yesterday, and now the Expropriation Act by President Cyril Ramaphosa. We are told that the act seeks to align the law on expropriation with our constitution and, of course, replaces the pre-democracy law that has been used over a period of time. Let's speak now to Mpumelelo Nyoka, who is an attorney and constitutional law commentator. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time this morning. So we are told that this new Expropriation Act aligns the law on expropriation with the Constitution, particularly Section 25. Just your broad overview and your impressions of the extent to which it achieves this objective.
Thank you very much, Thulas, and good morning. It's your own bond. Never mind the formalities of Mpumelelo or something. It's your own bond to call. Please, guys.
I know very well.
Yeah.
Occasionally we resort to the formalities.
Yes. Section 8 of the Constitution states clearly that all laws that are promulgated must comply with the Bill of Rights, including laws that were there before. The expropriation law of 1975 was not complying with the Bill of Rights as such, because Section 25 had to have a national legislation that is harmony with it. Hence this new law, first of all. Secondly, this is the mildest expropriation law universally by comparison. The Fifth Amendment of the United States has got an expropriation clause with compensation, with just compensation. Countries in Europe and the European Union has got this expropriation clause with just compensation. Ours has got 4 steps or conditions before you go to expropriation. First, you must identify public interest or public purpose. Secondly, consult with the expropriatee. And thirdly, have a negotiation and reach and a compensation. If that cannot be reached, the further condition that is also charitable is that it can take it for mediation to other people. You see, other countries do not have that. They just identify one thing, public purpose or public interest, they just expropriate.
So there are preliminary steps. Sorry.
There are preliminary steps
before you get to expropriation.
Yes, that's why I'm saying it's the mildest ever. Other countries, and if we are to have a far left radical regime or government, it will just identify public purpose or public interest and then expropriate. So I do not understand this legal process that is being taken against the bill. It's the fairest ever, and an endeavor to reconcile the previously land dispossessed and those that are the beneficiaries.
So let me tease out two elements that I'm just assuming that maybe the basis of some of the objections. Let's start with the definition of public interest. It talks about public interest includes the nation's commitment to land reform and to reforms to bring about equitable access to all South Africa's natural resources, etc., etc. I can conceive a situation where someone sees this as a short-circuiting of the land reform laws and what could not be achieved through the attempt that didn't succeed to amend Section 25 and saying, if we can't do it through that way, let's do it through this process where we will just expropriate and say it is in the public interest. Any validity to that kind of argument?
Partially, but thank you for that question. The misconception that we've been having since 1994 is to define property narrowly as immovable. That is the land or the buildings. Property in terms of the law includes both the movable and movables and the tangibles and intangibles. Intellectual property is property. If someone were to design a new AIDS chore today and they resist in having it out there, the government can expropriate that right, that intellectual property. So there it covers everything other than land. The other laws that you stated restrict themselves to land. The Section 25(1) says no one's property may be expropriated arbitrarily, which includes anything other than law. Argentina is an example of that. Company shares cannot be expropriated by the state without compensation. I'll make an example. You understand? Yes. So it goes broader than land. It's not restricted to land. And it's high time we know that even the bank that has got a bond over property, its right to that land is also violated. Not only the landowner or business or building owner, the bank's right to mortgage for it also has to be considered. So it goes broader than only land. That's the answer to that. But having said that, Glenn, those considerations, public interest is peculiar to that state, the history of that state. We've got a history of dispossession. We cannot run away from that. It will fall, therefore, within the category of public interest for South Africa and other countries that were colonially possessed.
And I see the second aspect that I wanted to pull at, that I'm just, trying to understand some of the objections. Section 12, subsection 3, and I do suspect that may be the big one, where it talks about, and the language of just and equitable compensation continues and it's retained, but it says in that subsection, it may be just and equitable for nil compensation to be paid where land is expropriated in the public interest, having regard to all relevant circumstances, and then it lists those circumstances. Is that, in your understanding, part of what may be the objection that says you wanted expropriation without compensation, now you're just calling it where you're just saying there may be instances where just an equitable compensation is nil?
It's possible if someone acquires land through illegal means. You may expropriate that land without compensation. I'll make an example. There are a variety of reasons or circumstances where that can apply. So the law is generic there. You will have to justify why it will have the nil compensation.
Yeah, and I see that it then lists those conditions where the land is not being used and the owner's main purpose is not...
Yes, like in Italy, there's someone who owns land. There's someone who owns land near Jersey. He's been in Italy for all the 30 years. He's never been there. I'm making an example of that.
Yes. Yeah, in instances where the property has been abandoned.
a property has been abandoned.
Yeah.
And the property law is clear. If someone is abandoned property, it's like you've got a right to take something that is abandoned. It's not even theft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
It's not even theft. If something's abandoned, take it. It's not even theft. It's abandoned. Thank you.
All right, Bond. Thank you for your time this morning. That's Bond Nyoka. He's an attorney and constitutional law commentator, just weighing in on the debate that's clearly raging, and it's set to rage, I can imagine, over the next few days, weeks, and months, and possibly even years, as many in society continue to debate it. And that brings us to 8 a.m. Let's check in now with Ann Musa with the latest news. And that's the news for this hour. Theft, accident, and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by Outsurance Essential. Get a quote today. SMS CAR to 43187.
In our top stories, ANC welcomes expropriation bill amid opposition parties' criticism, and Western Cape Education denies cutting teacher posts in poor areas. Good morning. The ANC caucus in Parliament has welcomed the signing into law of the expropriation bill. The party says it is not surprising that the legislation is criticised by those that benefited from the old Expropriation Act. The party says it believes the act represents a balanced perspective in protecting the rights of the expropriated holder and the public interest, adding that it's confident this law will make a significant contribution to promoting inclusivity and access to the national grievance of land, as government can use this legislation to expropriate land for development and the betterment of lives. Meanwhile, the DA says it will challenge the Expropriation Act. The DA's national spokesperson, Willie Okamp, says they are in discussion with the legal team to formulate their case.
The Democratic Alliance strongly reiterates our opposition to the expropriation bill, which President Cyril Ramaphosa has now signed into law. While the DA recognizes that the Constitution allows for acts of redress and restitution, including land reform, we have serious reservations about the procedure as well as important substantive aspects of the bill.
The Judicial Conduct Tribunal probing sexual harassment allegations against Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge will go into its 10th day of hearings today with the continuation of the cross-examination of complainant, the judge's secretary Andiswa Mengo. Mbenenge's counsel, Advocate Muzi Sikakane, concluded yesterday's hearing by challenging Mengo's testimony that she did not have a copy of her original December 2022 complaint when she had to lodge a new complaint, which is now before the tribunal. Sikakane pointed out similarities in the document word for word to illustrate that Mengo's contention is improbable.
They are absolutely identical. Do you agree with me?
Yes, I'm with you.
Is it still your testimony that you did not have a copy of the initial complaint?
Yes, I maintain.
The Western Cape Education Department has denied allegations of only cutting contract teachers' posts from schools in poor areas. This after research and education consultant Dr. Salan Naidu claimed that over 400 public schools in the wealthy suburbs of Cape Town were spared from teacher job cuts. He also accused the department of trying to conceal this information. In August last year, Provincial Education Minister David Maynard announced that 2,407 teacher posts in public schools would be cut this month. The department spokesperson Kerry Moklan says cuts were made using a post-provisioning model given by national government.
So certainly what happens, you have a computerized model, and it actually takes into account for each school a whole lot of factors. So it takes into account class sizes, the workload of teachers, the size of the school, curriculum, the poverty of the surrounding area, and a couple of other factors. And so essentially when you change the total number of posts and you reduce it, that's naturally going to have an impact on that equation and can result in a school having fewer posts. So to claim that it's only somehow rich schools that have somehow not had post cuts is just factually false.
The Office of the Public Protector in the Northern Cape has stepped in to help mothers battling the courts for child maintenance. The Public Protector's Office says it's inundated with many requests to step in amid delays and failure to hold fathers accountable. The Office of the Public Protector conducted public hearings in Galeshewe, Kimberley. The chief investigator in the office, Baldwin Eshunzi, says they received a number of complaints from the public wanting to be assisted with maintenance claims.
The main challenges that we experience or we encounter relates to undue delay in the processing of the application and the payment thereof.
And finally, Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Park Stau says government has met with the Mittal family, the majority owners of ArcelorMittal. Tau says this happened on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos. The meeting forms part of government's efforts to avert 3,500 job losses at the company's Newcastle and Vereniging plants. The steel producer announced it will close down its loss-making business. Tau says the meeting included several ministers and the president.
We have met with the Mittal family, the chairman of ArcelorMittal, both as ministers, the three ministers, Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Minister of Finance, Minister of Energy and Electricity, and we had discussions that said, how do we begin solving the problems that we have, particularly in Vereniging, particularly in Newcastle, and how to ensure that we avert what could be a jobs bloodbath. But we also had the meeting through the president. So the president also had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Mittal to talk about the situation.
Recapping the top story, the ANC caucus in Parliament has welcomed the signing into law of the expropriation bill. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
And that's the news for this hour. Theft, accident and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by Outsurance Essential. Get a quote today, SMS CAR to 43187.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
If you're driving out of Tembisa in towards Midrand on Allendale Road, just factor in some very heavy queuing traffic on that run through down towards Mastiff Road. The N3 going south, a crash at Modderfontein Road. Traffic starting to backlog quite heavily coming through that Edenvale area towards Galilees. Pinetown, the M13 out towards the N3 at Paradise Valley. That stays very slow. Durban's Umgedi Road coming in from Reservoir Hills through the M2 and down passing Macro. There's quite a backlog there. The M4 up to Virginia Airport on your way towards Mhlanga remains busy. And Cape Town, a crash on the R300 northbound between Stellenbosch Arterial and Van Riebeeck Road starting to hold things up. And the M3 is pretty heavily backed from Rhodes Drive in Newlands up past UCT all the way through to Hospital Bends. With your traffic update, I'm Rob Byrne.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports headlines, it's soccer. Orlando Pirates coach Jose Rivero downplaying the impact of Royal AM's late cancellation on their program. And in tennis news, Alexander Zverev is into the Australian Open final after Novak Djokovic retired injured. Details around 8:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
9 minutes after 8 on this Friday. Hey, good morning. It's good to be in your company this morning. This is the Morning Brief on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. We've got a lot of conversations that we've started over the last 2 hours. And of course, the major burning conversation at the moment has to do with the president appending his signature to what was until yesterday late afternoon the expropriation bill and has now become the Expropriation Act. I was explaining a bit earlier on that the reaction has been swift among the political parties. The Democratic Alliance saying that they are consulting with their legal team with a view to challenging the Expropriation Act, and that is the position as well of Action SA. Rise Mzansi, on the other hand, says the Expropriation Act aligns the law around expropriation with the Constitution of the Republic, and that is the position, of course, of government as well. And as you heard there from N. Musa, the position of the ANC caucus in Parliament. So you can see already the battle lines are drawn. How will this one play out? What do you understand about the Expropriation Act? And it is to be understood separately from the previous attempts to amend Section 25 of the Constitution to allow for expropriation without compensation. This one resides not with the Department of Land Reform, etc. It resides with the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. It has to do in the main with instances where an organ of state, a department or a municipality and the likes want to use land or property beyond land for public purpose and in the public interest. They can ask, having gone through the steps that need to be taken for that land to be expropriated, but for just and equitable compensation, but with exceptions where the compensation can be nil, zero in certain instances. For instance, in abandoned property being one of those examples. Weigh in on that debate for me, please. The number to dial 086 000 2032, as well as your WhatsApp voice notes on 061 410 4107 on that and any other issues that are exercising your mind this morning. This is SAFM. We are leading the conversations that move us. The third hour of the Friday edition of the Morning Brief starts now.
Specsavers now looks after your hearing as well as your vision with Specsavers Audiology. With 60 stores and counting, we are South Africa's largest audiology group. For a limited time only, buy one rechargeable hearing aid and get 50% off the second. You heard right. Buy one rechargeable hearing aid and get 50% off the second. Find your nearest store at specsavers.co.za. Specsavers Audiology. Test your hearing and join the conversation. T's and C's apply.
Whether you're having a early, snoozy, tantrumy, chill, frustrating, or jokey morning. Mornings love McDonald's, so choose happy and enjoy a Burry Burger double and a short filter coffee for only R39.90 from 6 to 10:30 a.m. at McDonald's. Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
Let me start with a call from Tim Kulu in Kilani in Johannesburg. Good morning to you, Tim Kulu. You want to talk about sexual harassment in the workplace?
Yes, thanks so much, Thulas. Yes, I heard your discussion with the advocate, and where she correctly pointed out one of the elements is this thing of demonstrating that the conduct was unwanted. Actually, last year I wrote about this in the light of the abrupt resignation of Professor Tawana Kupe. I'm sure you will recall.
Yes, I remember that.
Amid reports that before he went to University of Pretoria at Wits, he was also a serial sexual abuser. There was that article that appeared. So one of the points I made in the piece that I wrote on my LinkedIn page was that if we were to follow international best practice in Israel, for instance, in their laws on sexual harassment, the victim does not have to demonstrate or prove that the conduct was unwanted, as long as the perpetrator occupies a position of power and influence.
Yeah.
So there's a distinct recognition that power relations, typically the the victim is in a very, very difficult position because, like Mengo was saying in her earlier testimony, that I'm a single mother, this is the job I've been doing for these years, and essentially this person holds the fate of my career in his hands. And let's not forget, Thulas, in vast majority of cases, certainly the cases that I've read, Labour Court, Labour Appeal Court, arbitration awards, the perpetrator is usually typically being a man. He's not only senior in terms of rank at work, he's also senior in years. You find a 52-year-old sexually harassing a 26-year-old. Yeah. So those kinds of power dynamics, both in terms of age and more importantly at workplace, in terms of the position of power and influence. Yeah. So we're making it difficult to say Mengo must demonstrate that she showed this was unwanted. How do you do that in a situation like this?
So you are in favor of a regime that where we would move away from this requirement that you must show that it was unwanted. Rather just, that conduct itself, engaging in that kind of conduct with those power dynamics, then that's sufficient.
It's a given that it's unwanted.
Okay. Gotcha.
Because of the power relations, yes.
Thank you for your insights this morning. That's Mtimkulu in Kilani there. Let me take a call from Temba in Heidelberg. Good morning to you, Temba. You want to talk to me about land expropriation?
Yes, Thulas, how are you doing, Brotherman?
Very well, how are you?
Cool, Brotherman. Brotherman, I won't be long, I think it will be very immaterial for me to be long on the phone because I hardly think I have made my homework, in relation to listening to this threat by the president in relation to this land expropriation kind of a thing. Sure. But I have a view, I have a view. It's going to take just 30 seconds.
Yes.
I have a view. If it is a case of land expropriation with compensation, then it is fine. But if it is a case of land expropriation without compensation, I think the president of the foreigners himself, the Palapala land should be the first to be expropriated, as well as the Nkandla Gate should be expropriated. Those should be the first to be expropriated. That's my view.
Why is that, Temba? Very quickly, why is that?
Sorry?
Why should they be the first to be expropriated? Palapala and Nkandla.
Why is that? Because the Constitution also clearly states, even though I'm a lay person and I understand in law, but it also clearly states that everyone is equal before the law. So why not them?
Gotcha. Temba. Thank you. Temba in Heidelberg. Let me take Solomon in KwaZulu-Natal, also on the same issue. Good morning to you, Solomon.
Good morning to Thulasizwe and good morning to your listeners. I think we cannot be none wiser, fail to learn from our neighbor Zimbabwe, because it provides a very instructive and illustrious example of bungling parliamentary processes and follow some egos or some emotions. I think the president, taking from cases, he is forced. I think all Africans do wish expropriation of land without compensation, but the circumstances and the material conditions dictate otherwise. In Zimbabwe, there was disinvestment, sanctions, and everything else simply because Mugabe simply instructed the war veterans to go usurp and take up land everywhere. I think this process is a guided process. The president should be accepted, not unless he wants to sacrifice the little economy that we have in the country and the welfare and the order.
Gotcha.
Because, I think basically that is my point there, Thulasizwe.
No, thank you for that, Solomon. I do take the point that you are making. Let me move swiftly and take a call from Luba in Gugulethu. Good morning to you, Luba. Also on the issue of expropriation.
Yes, Thulas. How are you? Are you doing good?
Well, good. How are you?
Yes, I'm good. The thing is this now about this expropriation bill. I feel like it's a farce. There's nothing much behind it. And for example, if the president says that in the public's interest, so if the public's interest is that they want to take my grandmother's car, my grandmother's house, and my grandmother's room divider, are they going to do that on basis on the public's interest?
Yes.
Yeah, but then I can then go to the lawyers and then I can challenge them.
But Luba, the key caveat is that they can, but having followed a process, because it won't be arbitrary. Our commitment to the Constitution remains, except, of course, for those one or two instances where it is said your grandmother's house, your grandmother's room divider, etc., as you mentioned, may be taken and there'll be nil compensation paid. But those are clearly defined in a few of them, of those instances.
All right, thanks, Thulas.
Okay, got you, Luba. That's Luba in Kukule.
Cheers, man.
Let me take a call from Paseka in Mthatha. Good morning to you, Paseka. Also on the same issue, expropriation.
Oh,
but what's minag?
The bill is incorrectly titled because all what it talks about is merely topsoil. It's not talking about land. Land is more than topsoil, is more than residential land, is more than what you would call here farms, It should entail here in the mines, which are in the public interest in order for the country to be able to reduce unemployment, if you get what I mean. So I think I agree with the Deputy Minister Kalala that this is not political, it is merely socio-economic at the end of the day. And I think going forward, one is yearning for a day when this country will have political representatives who are able to explain this properly, not pull wool over the people's eyes. And lastly, I yearn for the day when you would join the ranks of Mr. Paul Nyoka. Congratulations on your achievement as a LLP.
Really appreciate it. That's Paseka in Mthatha there. So interesting takes, varied as you can hear about the Expropriation Act. Many people taking different positions on it, its usefulness, as well as, the extent to which it pushes the envelope within our constitutional framework of what you can and can't do in relation to someone's property.
Hi, morning to us. I only have one concern or a point to raise that looking at what Trump is doing, people are praising it, closing borders, deporting people. But why when South Africa do the same, we are called xenophobia? We are a xenophobia country. Why is Donald Trump not called xenophobia?
Sure. No, I hear what you're saying. I do think that you did hear there is a voice that does, that does not support the mass deportations by Donald Trump, including the extent to which they affect people who, until now, have had a pathway at least to American citizenship. So it's not that it's uncontested in the United States. It is. It's just that, their system is completely different. You can even use those executive orders. Whereas I suspect in this country, if you were to try and do that, there'll be a lot of permutations that may land you up in court very soon.
Hi, good morning, Thulas Mafuta. Thulas, I think this inquiry into banks should be extended to other areas of the economy, like franchising, like rentals, or especially for business premises. I think these areas are all suffering from biased practices, which are biased towards a particular people, in particular races, to us.
No, thank you for that. Let me take a call from Makashule Ghana. In fact, let me take a quick break. I see a call from Makashule Ghana of Rise Mzansi, and I'll take that call and others in just a moment.
Abafana Best 10 are pumped up to get to the round of 16, but the Chili Boys believe they will display a happy walk after the final whistle. This is the Nedbank Cup round of 32. Golden Arrows FC versus Chipa United FC on Saturday, 25 January at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of
since Uspillion won 5,000 rand, 5 tower on Wheel of Fortune, he only wears white push-in sandals. It's white, Baba. And he owns 10 identical pairs. Before he did not even know the Queen's language. Now, Kalabo, wow. Chance. Let's watch Wheel of Fortune weekdays, Monday to Friday at 7:30 on S3 and see how one spin changed Spillion's life and how it can change ours as well in just one day.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, let's continue taking your calls. Let me take a call from Makashule Ghana, who is a Rise Mzansi member of Parliament. Good morning to you. Also on the expropriation bill.
Thanks very much, Thulas, and happy Friday to you too. So ourselves as Rise Mzansi and myself as Makashule Ghana support the Expropriation Act. And one has been listening and reading a lot of untruths that are being said on the intent of the act itself. Others thinking that because there was a lot of noise that was made on the expropriation without compensation, so this is not the act that expropriate without compensation. This is that particular motion in Parliament did not succeed. What this act will do is that it will repeal the Expropriation Act of 1975. So there was an Expropriation Act in South Africa.
Yes.
So this act now repeals that act and brings it in line with the Constitution, something that was not existing. And that's why ourselves and myself support this act, and we believe that it's a step in the right direction insofar as addressing special justice for many people that need it.
You don't share any of the concerns about, for instance, defining the commitment to land reform as being part of what is included in the definition of public interest, as well as the provision that says there may be instances where just an equitable compensation is nil. You don't share that concern that says perhaps that may be short-circuiting land reform and in a way achieving what was intended with the unsuccessful attempt to amend the Constitution a few years ago?
We don't share that concern. We believe that this will ensure that the provisions of Section 25 of the Constitutions are fully implemented, and it offers the kind of guidelines that are needed. Because the problem is not that there was no provision in terms of expropriation, but there was no political will to follow the spirit and letter of the Constitution and ensure that land and property that gets expropriated. And by the way, there have been instances where land was expropriated, even when the Gau train was built, the land was expropriated. The people that were on that land were compensated in line with the Constitution. So this is what we've been saying. And for those ones that say no, this thing promotes land grabs and they want to go to court, they must go to court, so that the Constitutional Court then can be able to say no, this law is in line with our Constitution, and that's why as we support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's Makashule Ghana, a member of Parliament for Rise Mzansi. Let me take a call from Dumisani in KZN. Good morning to you, Dumisani. Also on the same issue.
Good morning.
It's lit this morning.
Yes. I'm very much interested to talk about this expropriation. You talk about the SAFM, because actually I want to support that caller who is adamant about the expropriation of places that are politically controversial, like Inkandla and Phala, I see.
Yes.
You see, things we expect, all of us, we expect that things must happen as to tranquilize other situations, like people, they want change. They need that all things that are controversial politically are solved. Which means I wanted to support that caller who said.
Imag, when you say Nkandla, you don't mean the entirety of Nkandla. You specifically mean a specific address in Nkandla. and Parapara. Parapara, at least,
Yes,
at least we know that's it's defined.
Are politically controversial. The government should have expropriated those places and then put them on a neutral zone so that people will put trust on the government.
How would that be in the public interest? I'm sorry, Tumsan. Just explain to me how you believe that would be expropriating Parapara and Nkandla would be in the public interest.
Actually, I think the government knows.
Okay.
Than anyone else that
gotcha.
It must go into our minds through the truth and honesty.
Gotcha. Dumzan, thank you so much for indulging me this morning. That's Dumsani in KZN. But I mean, jokes aside, with the points that are being made are about, the issue of where those instances are clear where there is to be nil compensation paid. Among what's envisaged is where there's the land is being used purely for speculative purposes, and then there's we were talking earlier with Bond Nyoka about instances where the owner has abandoned those properties. I do recall at the time that municipalities, some municipalities were saying, actually this will help us, where you sit with a piece of land that no one uses for any purpose, and you can't find the owner, and the owner has abandoned. This will be one of those instances where you can arrest urban decay and the abuse and hijacking of those buildings and all of those other social ills that it comes with by simply asking to expropriate that land. Let's see how it plays out when the rubber hits the road. Let's check in now with N. Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, the construction sector says the impending closure of ArcelorMittal's long steel production is starting to negatively affect its operations. The ANC caucus in Parliament has welcomed the signing into law of the expropriation bill, and Mineral and Petroleum Resources Minister Gwede Mantashe says illegal mining is a war on the economy. He was speaking during a media briefing in Pretoria on the mine's health and safety figures for 2024. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Crash on Joburg's N3 going south at Linksfield Road. Very heavy coming from Alex into that Edenvale area. Big enough crash to also be having an impact on the northbound side, getting up from Giluli's interchange towards Linksfield, so both ways under a bit of pressure. Allendale Road still very slow, getting across from Kluakop direction Midrand. You might want to avoid that. And we've got a report of a truck losing a load of onions. It looks like it's around Houghton Estate area, the Mike 1 going south, so from Melrose heading down to Joburg, fairly busy. Durban's N2 looks like something's happened just after Spaghetti Junction. In fact, it is a crash. That route should be easing at this time of morning, but it's not. So coming up from Booth Road through Spaghetti Junction towards Westwood Mall, Achilles, and there is the reason for the delay. Crash up at Linfield Park, causing a delay from Amlas Road on your way towards Pietermaritzburg. That's quite heavy. And Cape Town, a major delay now on the M3 coming inbound. It's a crash before Hospital Bend. Traffic's all the way back through Rhodes Drive at Newlands and back down Weinberg Hill. If you normally come in from the Takai Constantia side, might want to avoid the M3, hit some alternative routes. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Hey Zai, let's talk football for a moment. So Royal AM's troubles have set the PSL's programming into a tailspin, but the Orlando Pirates coach is not worried much about it.
Absolutely, Thulas. I think Coach Jose Rivero is saying that cancellation due to Royal AM's PSL and SARS complication hasn't derailed their focus. They've got their eye on the prize, and Pirates were scheduled to play Royal AM last night at the Harry Gwala Stadium, but the PSL suspended the fixtures indefinitely pending clarification of their issues with SARS and their operation under a curator. Pirates travelled back from Cairo early this week and were asked if the cancellation of this fixture was a blessing in disguise. Here's Pirates coach Jose Rivero.
No, not really. Look, it's a permanent adaptation to the circumstances, our job. And this is one more. We were prepared to travel to Durban and stay there for the rest of the week. have a good camp preparing these two games. We couldn't, unfortunately, it wasn't possible, and again we have to change again our schedule. It's the second time this season, once against Cape Town City in Cape Town because of the weather conditions. We have to play 24 hours later, and we have to find a way to stay, focused in the game. And this time it's changing a little bit the plans.
Elsewhere, Manchester City captain Kyle Walker landed in Italy for a medical with AC Milan ahead of an expected transfer. The 34-year-old Walker is City's long-serving right-back, but he told manager Pep Guardiola at the start of the month he wants to explore a move abroad. Rugby now. The Blitzboks are ready to take on the Perth Sevens this weekend, kicking off their campaign against USA this morning with a challenging pool that includes Argentina and hosts Australia. Coach Philip Snyman says their Cape Town Sevens victory has bolstered the team's belief, but maintaining those high standards is crucial. The squad is boosted by the return of key players Ronald Brown, Ryan Oosthuizen and Selwyn Davids, adding depth and experience. Brown, recovering from injury, is eager to leave Perth with better memories this time, but here's what Captain Siviwe Shakes Soyuzwapi had to say.
We really had good prep going into the week, and on Monday we hit the ground running already and really had a good session. Tuesday we had a run against the Great Britain team, which was also good to get different pictures against different opposition. We train a lot together against each other, so we know exactly what's coming with the guys, and we have a certain way of defending and attacking. So to get something different was really great, and today to round off the week with a captain's run.
And moving on to some news and tennis, an injured Novak Djokovic has quit after dropping the first set of his Australian Open semi-final against Alexander Zverev. Djokovic lost the opening set 7-6 in a tie-break and immediately walked around the net to concede the match to Zverev. Fans booed as Djokovic walked off towards the locker room, and he responded by giving 2 thumbs up. Djokovic was bidding for an 11th championship at the Australian Open and a record 25th Grand Slam title overall, hurt his left leg during his quarterfinal victory against Carlos Alcaraz. The number 2 seeded Zverev reached his first title match at Melbourne. And finally, golf, having his wife Manette as his caddy, is clearly working for Alton van der Merwe as he paid tribute to her for his opening 6 under par 66 to lead the first round of the SDC Open by a single stroke at the Zabula Golf Estate and Spa yesterday. His nearest challengers are Nikhil Rama, Rupert Kaminsky and Caleb Fife, who signed for rounds of 67. And that's a wrap of your sport on SAFM's Morning Brief, keeping you on par with the action. John Kerricker has more at 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Good morning to you once again in Dowling. So we've been talking about the ripple effects of such recent developments as the unrest in Mozambique and what it means for South Africa. You've got a case in point. Give me the example of Sasol and how that and other factors led to them issuing some kind of guidance around Secunda in Sasolburg.
That's right. Yes. And before we get into that, I'd just like to say that some of the strongest people in this country are Sasol shareholders. I think if you can weather a Sasol share price storm, you can literally survive anything.
Anything, ne? Yeah.
Anything. Late last week, going into this week, there was optimism which pushed up Sasol's share price. This was mainly due to the group's announcement around shaking up its chemicals division. The firm further said they were mulling listing Lake Charles. The news pushed that stock price above 100 Rand. Fast forward to a few days later, and Sasol is trading around 87 Rand per share, and this on the back of that disappointing update. Now, the energy and chemicals company has revised its production guidance downwards due to operational challenges at its Secunda and Natras operations. The company cited, of course, coal quality issues, civil unrest in Mozambique, and a fire at the Natras refinery as the main reasons for the decline. Now, Sasol's Secunda operations, which produce synthetic fuels from coal, have been affected by poor coal quality, resulting in reduced gasifier and equipment availability. The Natras refinery, where Sasol holds a 63% stake, suffered a fire that damaged supporting piping and infrastructure around the crude distillation unit. Repairs are expected to be completed by the end of February, with plans in place to address supply shortfalls. And then we have civil unrest in Mozambique, also impacting Sasol's central processing facility, reducing production rates in December. But the situation, Sasol says, has improved, and the unit is now operating at full capacity. The good news is that Sasol's international chemicals business reported improved revenue in the 6 months ended December. The company remains committed to executing key initiatives aimed at improving performance and mitigating challenges on that front. Overall sentiment, though, took a knock in yesterday's trading session, with Sasol's share price falling 4.6%.
Tell me about Supergroup. They are in logistics, are they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
And why are they warning about downbeat profits?
They are citing supply chain bottlenecks and a decline in coal exports, and so they expect to record a fall in profit for the interim period. The company forecasts a 2.3 to 12.5% drop in revenue and a 20 to 30% crunch in headline earnings. Challenges in the company's African supply chain business, including a decline in core export volumes due to, of course, disruptions in Mozambique and a slow turnaround times at South African ports, contributed to poor results. Additionally, the company's UK dealerships were impacted by forced declining used vehicle sales and shrinking, driven by tightening environmental policies. Supergroup plans to consolidate its dealership footprint in the UK and is also exploring the sale of its in-time business. The company's South African dealership faced a challenging trading environment as well, but reported a stronger performance than those in the UK. Supergroup's Fleet Africa business reported a strong performance, sustaining the ad hoc rental volume and optimizing operational costs. Now, more details on the group's performance will be released when those interim results are out on the 18th of March.
All right, lastly, Dowling, what kind of a day can we look forward to in the markets?
We could possibly see a turnaround, a recovery in local markets today, to us, as sentiment somewhat improves globally. Trade is still quite choppy as investors await further policy changes from Trump. In currency markets, the rand on track to close the week on a stronger footing, sitting below 18.50 against the dollar. Moving over to Wall Street, futures are flat. Lots of news to sift through on that front, particularly Trump's brief address, as well as corporate news. And then lastly, in Asia, trade mixed, but mostly in the green. Investors on that front digesting economic data and monetary policy moves from the Bank of Japan.
All right, thank you for that. That's Ntauling Lechela. Have yourself a great weekend. That's Ntauling there. She's kept you updated on business, the economy, as well as the markets for the last 3 hours here on The Morning Brief.
The Natal Rich Boys want to demonstrate their wealth with a win to reach the last 16. But the Buccaneers say they will illustrate why they are the reigning champions. This is the Nedbank Cup round of 32. British Bay FC battles it out with Orlando Pirates FC this Sunday, 26 January at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
All right, let me take one or two voice notes and before we move on to the next story.
Good morning, Thulas. Yeah, it's shocking what Emerald has revealed in his investigation. And we plead with the committee to actually invite him, because we can see that he's also a key player in this investigation. Okay, so can we perhaps have the committee to comment on this issue? Thank you.
Yeah.
And can we also have the banks to also come and comment on these issues, so that we can have an open debate here on radio as well?
Absolutely. There's actually value in everything that the portfolio committee on trade, industry and competition has started, as well as what you are saying, Emerald has been saying. And of course, the perspectives of the banks would be quite critical. It is important that we test out all of these claims and allegations so that in the end, we end up in a better position.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
All right, let's turn to this now. The advocacy group Women and Men Against Child Abuse says a shift is needed in the way South Africans discuss child sexual abuse material. This follows the recent arrest of Darren Wilken, a 35-year-old man allegedly found with disturbing evidence linking him to a transnational sex crime syndicate. WMACA's new campaign called Stop Calling It Child Pornography seeks to challenge what it calls the minimization of these crimes and to advocate for a stronger response to online child exploitation. Let's speak now to Miranda Jordan, who is from Women and Men Against Child Abuse. Good morning to you, and thank you for your time. So just to start off with, you have a problem, a serious problem with even the framing and naming it child pornography. Tell us why this is problematic.
Yes, good morning, Thulasizwe, and let me explain why we do this. If we look at the word pornography, I mean, pornography really is socially acceptable, it is legal, it involves consenting adults. It makes us think of Playboy, Husband magazine. It conjures those kind of images. When we put the word child in front of it, child is someone who cannot in any way consent to any sexual activity. And the laws are so strong against this in our country and have been reiterated just with the legal fraternity coming out with massive sentences for any type of sexual abuse. And in fact, even changing the laws to make them stronger, as we did in 2019, which shows that you could even come years later, somebody has sexually abused you, and still have your case heard, right? And that is because the impact of sexual abuse on a child is so strong, so negative, and for the rest of their life has long-term ramifications. So when we look also at what it takes to make an image of a child being sexually violated, a child being raped, we must know that that image is a crime scene because that image has been made by hurting a child. So if we call it pornography, it conjures all sorts of other things. But it doesn't conjure up is the extreme violation of an innocent child who someone has access to in order to create an image and then distribute the image.
So where's your focus in terms of that advocacy? Where does the change need to occur more? I'm not sure what the terminology and framing is in terms of, for instance, the sexual offences laws of our country. But I imagine that perhaps a big part of it is in the public discourse. People such as myself and other media practitioners, for example.
It is, exactly, but yes, it will also need to be changed now in the various laws that use the word pornography, where we need to start using images of sexual abuse. So whenever we want to describe images that involve children, we need to be and involve children being violated, we need to use that terminology. The fact images, whether video images or still images of child sexual abuse. And as you say, that is why we also wanted to be, and when we look, for instance, at the type of sentences we've got historically, but also the type of seriousness and prioritization that both the investigating officers, the prosecutors, and in fact judges have looked in the past. It has taken a lot of this kind of explanation from us as organizations to say, this is actually what happened, in order for us to get anything near a decent sentence. And when we start looking at something with a million images, and we can just imagine that millions of children have either been by multiple people abused, or one child has been used multiple times, or single children. We would be horrified in this country if we had a case where 500 children had been raped. We would have exploded all over the world.
Yeah.
So we need to start bringing that kind of seriousness to our...
Lastly, Miranda, what does this arrest of this man, Darren Wilkin, and the alleged links with transnational sex crime syndicates and the likes, what does that tell us about the extent of the problem of child pornography, child sexual exploitation?
Yes, well, first of all, it shows us many things. It does show us that, in our last huge case, about 2014, 2015, the Takedown Cloud9 case had 186,000 images, and we all thought we'd never heard of something like this. And you look 10 years later, and you're talking about 10 million. And this was picked up, as you know, by the FBI, which also highlights a concern in South Africa. Why did we not, for instance, pick up this case or monitor this person? Why is this the second time that South Africans who are involved in trafficking of images and selling and distributing and manufacturing of images of very young children in a lot of these images? And why is this brought us? And what is happening? And how do we beef up our South african cybercrime investigations, and why is it coming, internationally? So I'm hoping that now the departments, particularly our FCS units, also our cybercrime units, our serious and violent crime units, are looking at this and starting to prioritize these, pedophiles who are selling images. And also here we found, a large cache of money. Is that the only money? Who else was involved? I do believe that there will be, next week he is appearing in court, and I think that this is going to be a very large and intensive investigation.
Right.
And I think these numbers have highlighted this. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for your time this morning. That is Miranda Jordan. Miranda Jordan is from Women and Men Against Child Abuse.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Quite a big crash on Joburg's N3 southbound at Linksfield Road in the Eden Valley area, pushing a queue deep back into Alex territory. That's heading towards Gillilis, and it must be quite a big scene because traffic going north from Gillilis up to Linksfield is also being held up as well. N1 coming through Pretoria Midrand looks nice and clear. If you've left the run until now, you get an open road ahead of you. Moving up to Pietermaritzburg, a crash between Umlas Road and Linfield Park. The N3 is quite a heavy backlog in towards that particular scene this morning. The earlier crash on Spaghetti Junction up towards Westwood Mall going north, that is out of the way. Traffic is moving, and a big backlog of traffic heading into Cape Town today on the M3. That's a crash just before Hospital Bend. It's put a traffic queue right back to Rhodes Drive in the Newlands area. Behind that, there's the usual sort of bottleneck coming off Wynberg Hill to Paradise Road. You'll get through that and then you'll stay in traffic, so a good idea to avoid the M3 inbound. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Your best year starts at Dis-Chem with unbeatable deals for the whole family. Save R29.98 when you buy 2 packs of Softy 18 toilet rolls for just R200. Get 20% off all Sunlab products. Save R79.98 when you buy 2 Sanex shower gels or kids foam baths for only R100. Shop in-store and online for the lowest prices on the widest range of products. Now on until 16 February. Dis-Chem Pharmacies. Better health starts here.
Life-changing wins can happen when you play on the National Lottery. Just like the Lucky Powerball Plus winner who won over 33 million rand on Tuesday. Play Powerball for an estimated 100 million rand jackpot this Friday and you could be next. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529# for USSD. Panda, Pusha, play. Players must be 18 years old or play responsibly. eTuba is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
Why January when you could save with low-cost insurance for your older car? With Outsurance Essential, you get up to 1 million rand liability cover. So if you cause an accident, the other car could be covered for up to 1 million rand. Add motor warranty, which covers you for mechanical or electrical breakdowns. Get saving with Outsurance Essential for unfinanced cars older than 5 years and valued at less than 130,000 rand. SMS CAR to 43187. That's CAR to 43187. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
All right, let's make the most of the remaining minutes of this show now. Let's take a few of your calls. Hazel in Gqeberha, good morning to you. You want to talk to me about government spending. What about it?
I want to know what happened to the case about Fakila Balula that went to Mauritius with his family and spent 900,000 on a holiday.
Gotcha. That remains a concern for you, despite the fact that there's not seemed to be progress around it one way or another, either ending up in court or something like that.
So why is everything squashed or closed now?
Gotcha. That's Hazel in Gqeberha. I did see some, talk around that, around the issue of possibly going the route of a private prosecution. I think I did hear that conversation. I think there was an organization, can't remember the name now, that was reaching out to AfriForum's private prosecutions unit and saying that they would want to be involved in trying to bring a case against Fikile Mbalula. Let me take a call from Lala in Polokwane. Good morning to you, Lala. You want to talk to me about stokvels in this country?
Yes, basically the issue that you've been asking Mr. Lokelo that we spoke to earlier before, I think the man was not answering you honestly, and I want to give some little bit of my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
We start with, there is a difference between a contract and an agreement. So a contract must be something that has the obligations, there must be a consensus, it must have the obligations, it must have the rights, and it must also be legal and lawful.
Mm-hmm.
So that means someone must be able to enforce it legally. So if they have the stock sale and they have the constitution, each and every constitution, whether it's in the church or it's in the traditional council or wherever, it must still go and comply with the supreme law of the country, which is the constitution of the country.
Yes.
If it does not, then it is not lawful, it is not legal. So it cannot work. So if people they have an agreement of they've entered into a stock sale, they've made a constitution, but the constitution is not complying to the applicable laws that are governing those kind of gatherings or an investment, then it is not legal, it is not lawful.
Gotcha.
So it must be regulated in one way or another.
100%.
The first thing that I thought of is the Consumer Protection Act must be able, their constitution must be able to comply with the Consumer Protection Act, that in a case when a party or a member is no longer able to continue with us because of some other reasons, he can withdraw, maybe they can charge him a certain fee, but not just to say, no, you cannot withdraw. I think that was
keep them locked in.
Unlawful,
Yeah, Lala, thank you so much. That's helpful insights, because you're framing it along the lines of contract law and how that also needs to comply with our constitution. But of course, part of the difficulty comes in enforcing that. It's one thing for me to understand that even the constitution of my stokvel needs to comply with the laws of this country, including the constitution. It's quite another for me to be able to have access and be able to enforce it. Sometimes resources just become a bit of a challenge, and you are hoping for some kind of resolution that doesn't involve having to litigate. Fikile Alice, good morning to you. You want to talk to me about the hearings into Judge President Selby Mbeneng?
Yes, Thulas, how are you?
Very well, how are you?
I'm fine. Thulas, I'm sorry for the woman. I'm very worried.
Sure.
Yeah, they may see what they say, the woman of sexual harassment. Goes without saying. But she is a victim of sexual harassment Now she's a victim of Moses Kakan, who's putting tough questions on the innocent woman. I feel sorry for the women in South Africa, all of them, because they are sexually abused every day at the workplace. I feel sorry for that woman.
Fikile, what do you say to those who say the advocate representing Selbin Benenge, Judge Benenge, has the obligation to his client that if you accuse someone, your version has to be tested. It doesn't matter what the crime is, and I use crime loosely here because it's not within the criminal context. But whatever it is, if you accuse someone, the elements that establish that this person is guilty of this, all of those have to be shaken and rattled a little bit, including through cross-examination.
No, I don't have a problem with cross-examination. The problem I have is that this woman is the topic has shifted now from the woman who has been sexually harassed to the woman who ought to have said no, she would have answered this way. Now it's no longer about the judge, it's about the woman now.
Sure.
The one who was sexually harassed. Nothing is being said about the judge.
All right. Gotcha. Fikile?
Nothing is being said about the judge. I'm worried about that woman.
Gotcha. Thank you.
About all the women in South Africa.
Yeah.
I'm really worried.
Thank you. That's Fikile in Alice there. Thank you for your engagement. Yeah, and that's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Morning Brief. As usual, I've got to thank you for spending time with us and listening as well as engaging with us. The Talking Point is up next here on SAFM, and that's coming up after the news. And that's the news for this hour. Theft, accident and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by Outsurance Essential. Get a quote today. SMS CAR to 43187.
In our top stories, construction sector impacted by ArcelorMittal's announcement, and ANC welcomes expropriation bill amid opposition parties' criticism. Good morning. The construction sector says the impending closure of ArcelorMittal's long steel production is starting to negatively affect its operations. Master Builders, a business formation group representing over 4,000 companies in the construction industry, says steel prices have started to soar as shortages persist. ArcelorMittal announced plans to shut down its long steel operations in Newcastle and Vereniging, a move expected to result in 3,500 job losses. Master Builder President Sam Ngongo explains.
With ArcelorMittal sort of disappearing from the country, that means that, there are still a few small companies that are there in the country. They've already started pushing their prices very, very high because now the demand is becoming so big to them. Previously, there was ArcelorMittal. Now all these demands are coming to them. So they are pushing the prices up, and the length of time for deliveries of supplies means that the construction work is also affected by delays.
The ANC caucus in Parliament has welcomed the signing into law of the expropriation bill. The party says it's not surprising that the legislation is criticised by those that benefited from the old Expropriation Act, institutionalised racism and exploitation. The party says it believes the act represents a balanced perspective in protecting the rights of the expropriated holder and the public interest, adding that it's confident this law will make a significant contribution to promoting inclusivity and access to the national grievance of land, as government can use this legislation to expropriate land for development and the betterment of lives. The Bellville South Police is requesting help from the public to identify a man who was hit and killed by a train in Bellville in Cape Town. Police spokesperson Joseph Swartboy says the incident happened on Wednesday. He says the man was declared dead on the scene.
Information revealed that Bellville South Police responded to a complaint near Peter Barlow Drive. Upon arrival, their attention was drawn to the railway tracks where they found the body of an unidentified man who was hit by an oncoming train travelling from Sarepta station towards Belleville. The deceased was last seen wearing a blue jeans, blue and grey top.
Mineral and Petroleum Resources Minister Gwede Mantashe says illegal mining is a war on the economy. He was speaking during a media briefing in Pretoria on the mine's health and safety figures for 2024. Over 1,900 illegal miners were retrieved from a disused mine in Stilfontein in the northwest in the past weeks. This after the SAPS launched its crackdown operation Valamgodi at the mine in August last year. Mantashe says illegal mining remains a criminal activity.
There can be no two ways about it. It is criminals attacking the economy. Precious metals illicit trade is estimated in 2024 to about 60 billion. That 60 billion is a leakage on the value of the economy of the country. It's a serious criminal activity. And we support Valamgodi.
And finally, UNICEF says at least 242 million children had their schooling disrupted last year due to climate hazards. The BBC's Julian Duplain has the details.
Heat waves, cyclones, storms and floods closed schools or disrupted teaching in 85 countries, affecting 1 in 7 children worldwide. South Asia was the worst affected region, with East Asia, Latin America and West Africa also badly hit. UNICEF says children are more vulnerable to extreme heat than adults, and that serious disruption in education can lead them to dropping out of school altogether, especially girls. UNICEF provided practical support, distributing education kits to children in Vietnam when Typhoon Yagi damaged schools, and building temporary schoolrooms in Mozambique after Cyclone Chido.
Recapping the top story, the construction sector says the impending closure of ArcelorMittal's long steel production is starting to negatively affect its operations. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
And that's the news for this hour. Theft, accident and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by Outsurance Essential. Get a quote today. SMS card to 43187.
Hi, my name is Kutlwana Masote, your host of Weekend Sundowner Classics every Saturday and Sunday afternoon between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. exclusively on SAFM. Now, this is where you get your best classical music jams on any radio platform. Join me every Saturday and Sunday afternoon between 4 and 7 p.m. Weekend Sundowner Classics.
Why January when you could save with low-cost insurance for your older car? With Outsurance Essential, you get up to 1 million rand liability cover. So if you cause an accident, the other car could be covered for up to 1 million rand. Add motor warranty, which covers you for mechanical or electrical breakdowns. Get saving with Outsurance Essential for unfinanced cars older than 5 years and valued at less than 130,000 rand. SMS car to 43187. That's car to 43187. Licensed insurer and FSP, TCs and information online.
The Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
In 1990, when Nelson Mandela was freed and liberation movements were unbanned, many of them had a rallying cry, Umhlaba wethu, the land is ours. There was an expectation that democracy would mean that black people could regain access to their land. And this isn't only just about history and injustice in the past, it's a question of the present and the future. South Africa is the most unequal society in the world. Our cities are marked by this. As we grow as an urbanizing society, more and more people are pushed out onto the periphery. Poor people have to migrate from the outlying townships to places of work and opportunity. Domestic workers spend 40% of their incomes just on transport, and they give up time with their families. This is a land issue. It means that we still have apartheid cities.
Professor Ruth Hall there. She is the DSI NRF South Africa Research Chair in Poverty, Land and Agrarian Studies at the University of the Western Cape. 8 after 9 o'clock. Welcome to the Talking Point as we wrap up yet another week in this first month of the year. I trust that you have had a good week. I'm Kathy Mutlatlana. A pleasure to be with you as we lead conversations that move us, and I'll be with you until midday as always. So yes, some important remarks there being made by Professor Ruth Hall in terms of the challenges that South Africa faces with its spatial planning and of course the emotive issue of land, right? And what has been really decades in the making. Yesterday we saw the President Cyril Ramaphosa sign the expropriation bill into law. Question is, does it deal with the fundamental issues that face the majority of people when it comes to landlessness in this country? Is this piece of legislation going to result in a radical shift that has that kind of impact on addressing questions and issues of land? And this is land poverty, land inequality. So what we know about what this piece of legislation does, right, is that it aligns the expropriation legislation to the 1996 Constitution, and it repeals the Expropriation Act of 1975. And it sets out then and explains how expropriation of land within the public interest can take place, for public purposes. And there could be a number of reasons why government wants to expropriate land, right? It could be maybe for building roads, for building houses, for delivering other public services. Part of the aim, though, that the debate in the country has been centered on is addressing land inequality for the majority of people in this country. Now, the question is, does this bill fundamentally change that? And I'd love to hear from you on this topic this morning. How do you think that the signing